Welcome in, everybody, to the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia. That's Mike Tagliere. That's Kyle Yates. And we're taking you through the draft grades today. That's right. It's time to go back to school. Who's going to end up getting passes? Who's going to get honors? Who's going to get left back? We're going to tell you. We're going to go through all the teams, and we'll try to do as quickly as we can, as briskly as possible, but still give you all the depth of knowledge that you come and you stay for when you think of the Fantasy Pros. So we are ready to go through the draft. We have kind of let the dust settle a little bit here. Not too much, but just enough that we can really start to look at the high-end version of what's happening, what's going on, and when the dust has settled, indeed, who came out on top. And tags, it's been a very eventful draft weekend for all of us. I know real life has crept in on top of all of the draft madness. How are you balancing everything? Are you doing all right, buddy?
Make it work, man. There's people that make excuses, and there's people that make things happen. I make things happen, damn it.
Whoa.
And I'm just excited. I'm excited that there's no more hypotheticals. We talked about this at the end of the pre-draft cycle, that I was just tired of talking about, well, maybe this and maybe that. Now we have concrete things in place that we could actually talk about. So there's no time for sleep. There's no time for anything in real life to come up. It's football time.
That's right. Tags makes things happen. That's what he is. He's the magic man. Which I don't know if you're the other part of Shake and Bake, Yates. I'm not sure.
I am not the Magic Mike. I am not Magic
Mike. Well, I think we all know that, and anybody watching on YouTube can verify that.
No one has ever accused you of that.
No, that's. Although, you know, if you want a couple more subscriptions, I don't know. We'll see if we'll start up some music later in the show and see, maybe put a little dance on for everybody on our YouTube channel, Fantasy Pros. Yates, you're the other part of the Shake and Bake, and I know it was a very emotional Thursday night for you. It was, and if you haven't seen it, please go back and watch. I don't exactly remember where we were in terms of the mark of time. All I know is it was a beautiful moment in time where Justin Fields is now a Bear, and Mr. Yates is very happy about that.
I certainly am. It was anguish there for a couple of minutes, but no, definitely very, very happy to have Justin Fields in Chicago, and then, of course, to be on the other side, like Tags mentioned, just to be on the other side of it, where we finally have the pieces in place. We can now move forward, start to do our projections, right? That's going to be happening here pretty soon. So we're going to look back here a little bit, and then just for a couple weeks, and then, man, we put the pedal to the metal, and we start looking at the 2021 fantasy football season.
Yes, Tag said it best. I think the hypotheticals are over, and they're fun to a certain extent. But after a while, they just start to grade on me too. And now it's happy to just get here and let's actually grade the teams on what they've done. Before we get going, I want to just let everybody know we've got a brand new giveaway too, thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction. And no, Tags can't get involved in this one, no matter how much he wants to, because it's a signed Calvin Ridley jersey. What up? Go to fantasypros.com/contest, and this could be yours if the price is right. Now, this could be yours. All you got to do is go to Apple Podcasts or CastBox, make a review of the show, screenshot that, and then all you got to do is head over to fantasypros.com/contest. You upload that screenshot of your review, you fill out the little text in there, everything you got to do, and bang, just like that, you could win, again, a Calvin Ridley autographed jersey. How about that? Love that. Thanks to our buddies at Pristine Auction, always making great stuff. And hey, once you've entered once, that's it. You're in there for all the other entrants later on in the year. So it's just a good practice. So go do a good deed, drop a nice review, and maybe win yourself some swag. And also, I want to remind everybody too, Friday we got a live stream coming up where we're going to do a first-year startup dynasty mock draft. That's going to be great fun. The three of us drafting alongside each other. It's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be beautiful. You're going to want to get in there on that. And you can get involved too using our draft simulator and dynasty draft simulator at fantasypros.com/simulator. So get in on the fun with us and with your friends and invite everybody, and let's get prepped because, as Tag said, the time is now. The official turning of the page of the 2021 season. Free agency done. Draft done. Everybody's basically where they're supposed to be, except who knows, maybe Aaron Rodgers. But let's move on from this, and let's start alphabetically. That's the only fair way to do it, and let's start with the Arizona Cardinals. Zaven Collins was their first-round selection, the outside linebacker from Tulsa. Then Rondale Moore was taken in the second round from Purdue, the wide receiver. Then in the fourth round, Marco Wilson, the corner from Florida. So Tags is going to give the grade, and then Yates is going to give us some knowledge. So what were your thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals here? They got their linebacker, certainly something they needed desperately, and they got another wide receiver who is probably going to play in the slot. So take me through your grade for the Cards.
Yeah, I gave them a B. I felt like it was a competent draft. I didn't think it was over the top great. I tried to be a tough grader. I think that 17 teams got B- or worse. So I would say that the Cardinals were slightly better than average. The one thing I did say that I felt like Zaven Collins, we got word the day of the draft, actually the night before, that Zaven Collins was started to be tied to the Cardinals, which I felt like it was fine if you want to add him to your defense because it gives you this versatility, this flexibility that you want, that you have with Isaiah Simmons, that you have with Budda Baker. But he was a guy that was expected to go in really the mid-20s, so I felt like they probably could have traded back and gotten a little more ammo because they were missing some of those middle round picks. And then they waited to draft cornerback until the 4th and 6th round. Now, Tagovailoa was someone they got in the 6th round that I actually liked more than Marco Wilson. So I overall, I didn't think it was a bad draft. The only weakness that I think they didn't address was nose tackle. And there were quite a few nose tackles that fell in this draft that I really didn't understand what was happening there. It was a weak class, but at the same time, it's really a need on their roster. So I give them a B. I thought it was a competent draft.
Are you in the same page there? B, confident draft, and is Moore somebody that you could expect to make some sort of headway in 2021 with this offense?
Yeah, let's talk about Rondale Moore specifically, landing here in Arizona, because now this creates a little bit of an interesting situation. You've got DeAndre Hopkins, you've got AJ Green, Andy Isabella still there as a, somewhat high pick from a couple years ago in the back end of the 2nd round, of course. And then Christian Kirk also in this offense. When AJ Green signed, we said, all right, Christian Kirk might actually be moved into the slot and he might have his rightful home where he could be fantasy relevant. Well, now with Rondale Moore, you're most likely going to have him in the slot as well. So with how much this team runs for wide receiver sets, I think there's going to be more than enough work for Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore. But for Kirk, who was someone that we had kind of held up high hopes for or had high hopes for, entering into the NFL draft, leaving the NFL draft, we're kind of going like, all right, it might just be right back to where we were. I just don't know how this all is going to shake out from a target share perspective. But Rondale Moore is electric. You get him the ball underneath. I think it's going to help Kyler Murray. I think that's what it all comes down to, is that this selection of Rondale Moore, their addition of AJ Green this offseason, all it does is help Kyler Murray.
Yeah, make it 3 for 3. I kind of left the same way. We all had expectations that maybe this year for Kirk things would go a little bit better, but this pick of Moore certainly, I think, at least dampers those expectations a bit. The Atlanta Falcons decided that they're going to try to compete this year, and I think they should, all things considered. Kyle Pitts was that first pick for them, a Florida tight end. We all know about that. He did go at 4, as we had been predicting quite a bit over here at Fantasy Pros. Then Richie Grant from UCF, the safety, was taken the 2nd round. Jalen Mayfield in the 3rd. And the offensive tackle there, Darren Hall, and Drew Damian after that. So a corner and a center here. So what's the grade for the way the Falcons came out of draft day?
I gave them a C. Now this is not a great grade. And I understand there's some Falcon fans that are going to be sitting back and saying, whoa, Kyle Pitts is a generational talent. I think there's a reason that we've never seen a tight end drafted before pick number 5 before, because it's a difficult position to project at the next level. I mean, people want to say he's the next Kelsey, he's the next Kittle. Well, those guys weren't top 5 picks. And it's because you can't always project that. O.J. Howard was a phenomenal prospect coming out. I don't want to say he was as much as Kyle Pitts that people were viewing him as, but people were very, very high on him. People were very, very high on Vernon Davis. His career didn't get off to a fantastic start. People have compared him to Darren Waller. Darren Waller, again, slow start to his career, came on. So I'm not saying that Kyle Pitts is a bad football player. I think he's a really good football player. But when you have the 4th pick in the draft, I think it's really tough. I think they were in a weird spot where it's like either you take a quarterback there or you trade back a little bit. I don't hate Pitts, so I'm not going to downgrade him that much. Love the Jalen Mayfield pick in the 3rd round. Offensive tackle, right tackle that should start on day 1 over Caleb and Gary. I love that pick. But the big no-no for me was Richie Grant in the 2nd round when Trayvon Marrig was still on the board. I mean, the guy was minus 400 to be the first safety off the board for a reason. And you guys, you had the chance to get him as a 2nd safety and you still passed on him. This is a team that has to take some risks because you're rebuilding. You're looking for the best player. Trayvon Marrig has some health concerns with his back, but at the same time, he's clearly the best safety in this class. And then you kind of work down through it. And Yates, tell me if I'm wrong here, but the biggest need that the Falcons had was pass rusher. And they didn't take one until the 5th round. So they still have a massive, massive problem on defense. The offense has always been a strength for them, but they really missed on cornerback and edge rusher, which is why I downgraded them to C.
Yates, is that fair? I mean, did they do enough defensively, in your opinion, in this draft to make any headway? Because that's been the weakness of this team for many years now.
It has, and this is a team that, yes, they have a very, very solid offense, and adding Kyle Pitts to it just takes it over the top. Now, is he part of a bigger piece of the puzzle where if you are going to move on from Julio Jones because of how cap-strapped you are, going to from one generational talent to another, that might be part of it, where we might be a little bit more critical of this move now. But when we get 3 months down the road and Julio Jones is on a different team, then it kind of makes a little bit more sense. Regardless, I think that adding Kyle Pitts to your offense is a solid move. In how much the tight end position is utilized here in Atlanta, I think that it is a very solid move. To answer your question, Joe, there are definite needs all over this roster. Spending that early pick on a safety like Richie Grant, who the league was higher on than the consensus media, he's that cover one safety. He's that over the top safety who's going to be able to roam. And so Trayvon Merrick doesn't bring that level of athleticism. Now, I didn't think that Richie Grant would go before Trayvon Merrick, so I get Tags' criticism there, but it also does make sense. Edge, definite need. Running back is also a definite need for this team. When you look at Mike Davis as your starter, who started to, he wore down as that season went on last year. Like, he's not going to be able to withstand the type of workload that Atlanta is going to ask him to operate in, right? With Arthur Smith coming over and utilizing Derrick Henry so much in the running game. Now, he's not going to get anywhere near Derrick Henry's workload. No one is. But I think with Mike Davis now, you add Javion Hawkins in undrafted free agency. He's certainly not someone that you're going to give a significant carry total to. So it's just an incomplete puzzle. And I think that this team went into it saying, we're going to take the guys that we like, and we know that we're in this for the long haul, right? With Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith coming over now, they've got that long-term security. So they can say, we're going to take our guys now. We know that we're not going to be able to compete really this year. Let's load up with some guys that we like, and then next year we'll try to maybe hammer home some of these other needs and see if we can get some discount deals in free agency.
They're going to have to start taking a page out of the Titans book and just keep drafting defensive guys for an entire draft or two. Let's go to the Baltimore Ravens, who had 2 picks in the first round. Rashod Bateman was the first one, the wide receiver from Minnesota. This makes me happy. This makes my soul smile. I think we need to give him some other weapons so we could see if it's the chicken or the egg that's the problem here. Also, you had Owe, the linebacker from Penn State, going to them as well with pick number 31. Then Ben Cleveland, the guard from Georgia, in the 3rd round, along with Brandon Stevens, the corner from SMU. And the 4th round, you had Wallace, the wide receiver from Oklahoma State. So give me an overall grade here, in your opinion, Tags, of what Baltimore did, because look, they did come away with a linebacker who kind of fits what they like to do, right? Who is probably going to be a fun project for Harbaugh. And you did come away with a wide receiver, which we all know is a need. Sammy Watkins is not enough for Baltimore to prove if it is indeed Lamar Jackson, or if indeed just not enough talent at the position to open up this passing game and open up this offense a little.
Baltimore was the best draft, in my opinion. I say that because this team had a couple clear holes in the roster. Edge rusher was the major one that everybody knew about. Wide receiver was the other. I would say that how often they run the ball, that they should have gotten a guard. So you run through it and you say Jason Bateman and Tylan Wallace. Like, their wide receiver depth chart is all of a sudden they have legitimate starters on their roster.
Not from Ozark. Not you know. Yep. And it's Rashod Bateman, but that's okay. Jason Bateman is very versatile. You know
Jason
what?
Bateman,
Jason Bateman, anybody who
friends.
can do Ozark and still do Arrested Development is a guy that I want on my team. I just want to put that out there.
He's
but
a
yes,
drug
Rashod
mule.
Bateman.
I mean, yeah. No, but Jason Bateman, I hear he plays fantasy. I want to play in a league with Jason Bateman. So if anybody out there listening knows Jason,
yeah, let's get him on the show.
Seriously. Yeah, I hear he's a big fantasy guy. So, but going on, Owe is someone that in Jim Harbaugh's defense, in terms of what they do in Baltimore, they just churn out edge rushers. And that's why they were comfortable letting them walk in free agency. So they bring in him. I happen to think that their strength and conditioning coach is going to add some weight on him, make him stronger, get better. Ben Cleveland was arguably the best interior offensive lineman in this draft class. Absolutely loved him in the 3rd round. Again, so Shaun Wade, I was not particularly high on him as a cornerback on the perimeter, but he was good in the slot if you go back to 2019. And fortunately, Baltimore, they don't need a perimeter cornerback, so he will be covering the slot or playing some sort of hybrid safety role. And then you go to the undrafted free agents. Ardarius Washington was someone that was left out of the draft, and it blew my freaking mind because the kid can play. The thing is, he's undersized, and everybody kind of knew that coming in, but at the same time, he can play football. Like, he's a natural football player. I love that they snagged him right away. It was one of the biggest steals. I had him as a 3rd, 4th round pick. So I gave the Ravens an A in this draft. I'm not going to give him an A+ because there's always something you can do better, but I give them an A. They hit the nail on the head. Yates,
are you as high on what Baltimore came away with as Tags is?
I like Baltimore's draft. I'm not that high to call them the best draft in the best draft in the league. So I think you definitely look at, if I had said going into the draft, what team would be the one to take Ben Cleveland, the interior offensive lineman out of Georgia, who's 350 pounds or whatever he is, and then and a fullback in the 5th round, I probably would have said Baltimore. So definitely sticking true to their board, to their process, taking Jason Oweh, who is worth the gamble there in the back end of the 1st round. You're banking on his athleticism. They needed help at the edge position. So solving that or addressing that position in the 1st round, really, really solid move. The interesting thing here is going with Rashod Bateman and Tylan Wallace there as your wide receivers, who are not what we've seen Baltimore do, right? With Miles Boykin, these wide receivers that they've drafted are more athletic and run blockers than they are wide receivers, right? So this is a change in philosophy where you've got Rashod Bateman now, who is going to be able to operate underneath and in that intermediate levels of the field. Tylan Wallace is a route runner. Like, I called him a route running savant in my pre-draft notes because this is what he does so well. Now, the question becomes, does Wallace even see the field? I don't know if that's going to be the case because you're still going to have Marquise Brown. You're still going to have Rashod Bateman there. And then Devin Duvernay out of the slot, I think. But that's a very rare occasion when they go to 3 wide receiver sets. So where's the role here for Wallace? From a fantasy perspective, I'm not very high on Tylan Wallace landing here in Baltimore. Rashod Bateman, not really high on it either, as opposed to some of the other spots that he could have landed in. But from a football perspective, it is a beautiful draft where you address it with the wide receiver position, which you've needed to with guys like Rashod Bateman and Tylan Wallace.
Yep.
What's the best Jason Bateman comedy? Is it the Change-Up or is it Horrible Bosses? I love Horrible Bosses.
I put them both in the same category, honestly. I think they're both fantastic.
They're both very
so
good.
I'm going to go Change Up just because Ryan Reynolds, I mean, come on.
It's a good combination of those. Yates, any input on this one?
Nope. This is
He's probably never seen it either.
You're not allowed to see the R-rated movies. I know it's tough. All right, let's go to Buffalo and let's talk about the man who put a corn shirt on our own Yates. Gregory Rousseau was the first pick for the Buffalo Bills, so that's going to happen. Defensive end for Miami. Then you had Carlos Basham Jr. with their 2nd round pick, defensive end out of Wake Forest, Spencer Brown from Northern Iowa, the offensive tackle, and then he went another OT with Tommy Doyle from Miami of Ohio. So clearly a little bit of line support here. That's good. Buffalo was a team tags coming into this draft where I feel like all of us went, well, they can kind of afford to just kind of take what they want. And clearly they've also made a statement coming away from this draft that, yeah, we're just going to go with the running backs we have.
Yeah, no, I give them a B- here because they were a team that had very few holes, and it's like, so to take 2 edge rushers, to take 2 offensive tackles, you go in the trenches. I mean, those are the positions that are the most important outside of quarterback, so I have zero issue with what they did from a position standpoint. Now, I'm not going to raise their grade because I felt like they reached on both offensive linemen. Neither of these offensive tackles were expected to go as high as they took them. Rousseau is a project, but he's a high upside project. I love the pick there because, again, he's not someone, he's going to be a rotational pass rusher right out of the gate. He's not going to be an every down starter for them. So I like the pick. I feel like they can develop him a little bit. Basham is someone that's more pro ready. I would say he's more limited upside, but you know what you're getting out of him. One of my favorite picks they made though was actually in the 6th round, Marquez Stevenson. They run a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, and Stevenson is a guy that can like rip the top off the defense. I would have rather seen the Browns, a guy they took in the 3rd round, Anthony Schwartz. I would have rather them seen wait until 6th round, take Marquez Stevenson. Like, he's someone that is a burner, makes guys look like they're standing still at times. So
Tags. Does Marquez Stevenson fill the Isaiah McKenzie role?
I don't
That's
know
what
if
I thought.
I don't know if they're going to use him in that. I don't know if he's versatile enough to do that. But it would be. It would make some sense, I guess. But I want to see him as a field stretcher. They do run a whole lot of 4 wide receiver sets. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is there now, but he's a short-term solution. So we could see Stevenson mixed in on the field and have a few splash plays, which could make fantasy owners happy from time to time.
Did the Bills make a splash for you, Yates, with this draft, or was this just okay as well?
I liked their first 3 rounds. Now, if you would have switched Boogie Basham and Gregory Rousseau, I probably would have liked it even more. I actually liked Basham over Gregory Rousseau. So not just for the bet and to see tags and overalls, but no, I think Boogie Basham fits exactly what they want at the edge position. Big, physical, strong, can stand up and run defense. Gregory Rousseau, I am not very high on him, but Sean McDermott has earned my trust So where I say that if there is any player, any defensive coach that's going to be able to develop Gregory Rousseau the right way, Sean McDermott is at the top of the list. So Spencer Brown, though, I disagree with Tags on this one. I thought he should have gone way higher than this. I love Spencer Brown, and I love his athleticism and what he brings to the table. So to get him at pick 93 overall, I think was just an absolute steal.
Yates, did you see his video?
Yep.
If I'm the owner or the coach, I'd be like, dude, we just drafted you. Take it easy for a little bit.
Well, I mean, with Buffalo, that being the tradition, I think if I'm the owner, I'm kind of like, yeah, let's go. Like,
it's one way to get yourself ingratiated with the fan base is just put somebody through a table. All right, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers, who I think surprised a lot of people with this J.C. Horn pick. I know on draft night we were surprised. They took him 8th overall, the corner from South Carolina. Then Terrace Marshall Jr. They did pick up a wide receiver from LSU in the 2nd. Brady Christensen, offensive tackle from BYU in the 3rd, followed by Tommy Tremble, tight end from Notre Dame, and Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State at running back. So, Tags, when you step back now and have a little time to look at what the Carolina Panthers did, they continue, again, early and often, to address this defense and remake this defense, which I think is great. They did get a wide receiver. Did they get the right guys, in your opinion?
I feel like it was a competent draft for them. I gave them a B as well. They got good football players. J.C. Horn's a good football player. Now, do I think that they should have gotten him at 8? I don't know if I would do that. Now, Terrace Marshall, there's mixed opinions on him. I happen to think that he's going to work in this offense where it's like he plays a big slot role. He's able to do that. So I'm curious to see how they do this with DJ Moore and him, whether or not they bring Moore into the slot a little bit more or they play Marshall in the slot right away, which I think would be helpful because I don't think he's like a dominant route runner that's going to win consistently on the perimeter. So playing that big slot role is something that they probably can do. I thought they'd have more of like a Curtis Samuel type player that they would draft for that role, but they didn't. Offensive tackle waiting until the 3rd round, it felt a little bit bad because this offensive line needed some rebuilding. But then you look at it and you say Tommy Tremble, the tight end they drafted in the end of the 3rd round, he's someone that is more of a blocking tight end. I compared him to like a fullback, like a Kyle Juszczyk, reminds me of. Chuba Hubbard is someone that, if he came in the draft last year, he probably would have been a 2nd-round pick, but he fell. I think it's perfect to fall behind, Christian McCaffrey is basically the only guy on the depth chart to have a chance. They got one of the steals in the draft, though, and Yates knows it. I know that he doesn't agree with me, but Davion Nixon, the interior lineman out of Iowa, I believe this dude is a steal. I've been saying it all draft, and it seems like there's a very, very wide range of opinions on him, and I don't know why people don't like him. I didn't see anything on film that would suggest you just stay away from him. I think he's going to be an impact player for them. I thought they did pretty good. I would have liked to have seen more offensive line help earlier on in the draft, but it's just not the way things shook out because offensive linemen were flying off the board more than I think I've ever seen them in a draft.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of young quarterbacks out there too. People want to protect those big-time investments. So, Yates, do you think that Horn went where he went as a first corner taken overall because of his numbers against some of the better talent out there too? Because that was something that you would see flashed quite a bit, was the stat lines that other of the premium offensive talent, how they would struggle on those days where Horn was on the other side of them.
Listen, would I have taken J.C. Horn as the first corner off the board? No, I personally wouldn't have. I would have taken him, even with Caleb Farley's injury history, I would have taken him behind him and Patrick Surtain. So, but this fills a huge need on this roster. They needed another corner and a guy who is so versatile where he can, again, I mentioned it in the pre-draft process, where he lined up and guarded Kyle Pitts. Then the next week he's guarding Elijah Moore out of the slot, right? Like it was just, he was moved around a ton. Press man corner. I think that he gives that defense a little bit more attitude. And so I think it's hard to criticize the opinion, the pick there. Would I have taken him there? Probably not. But it does fill a huge need. However, down the rest of that draft, I absolutely love their draft. I mean, Terrace Marshall, I did not like him in the first round conversation. This was the range that I expected him to go, and where I'm fine taking that boom or bust option with Terrace Marshall. I do think that he is going to line up on the outside, and you're going to move DJ Moore into the slot. That's kind of what I'm projecting. And so if that is the case, then DJ Moore with Sam Darnold as his quarterback for fantasy purposes in 2021, sign me up. But outside of that, Brady Christensen, you did have a need at offensive tackle. That fills a huge need. And with a player who has a sky-high ceiling, he has some developing to do. But if you can get the right coaches around him and develop him, he's got the athleticism. Tommy Tremble, love the pick. Chuba Hubbard, love the pick. Davion Nixon, at that point, it was funny. I messaged Tags during the draft, and I said, you won the Gregory Rousseau battle, but I won the Davion Nixon war.
You did.
And so Davion Nixon, as a rotational pass rusher, I like this value on him. In the 5th round, I like that value. He does bring some upside. He does have that potential to get to a point where if you look back in 2 years and he develops the right way, you're saying the 5th round was an absolute steal. Keith Taylor, love it. Deontay Brown in the 6th round, love it. Shi Smith in the 6th round, love it. Like all Carolina did was soak up value throughout the entire draft. They traded down in several spots, added some really, really good players to their roster.
All right, it takes a lot of endurance to go through 3 days of the NFL draft, and if you need some more endurance in the bedroom, you might want to look into Blue Chew as one of our sponsors. It's a unique online service that delivers the active ingredients that are the same as Viagra or Cialis, but in a chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew's tablets combat all forms of ED and can help men gain extra confidence when it's time to perform. Blue Chew is also an online prescription service, so that means no doctor visits, no awkward conversations, and no waiting online in the pharmacy, and it ships right to your door in a discreet package. So what you're going to do is, if you want the benefit and the extended confidence that comes along with Blue Chew, visit BlueChew.com for more details, and we've got a special offer here for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free when you use our promo code FantasyPros at checkout and pay just $5 at shipping. That's BlueChew.com. Again, that promo code is FantasyPros, all one word, to receive your first month free. And we want to thank our sponsor, Blue Chew, for being part of this podcast here. So let's move on, boys, to another team here. We've gone through a few already, and we had to make you wait a little bit longer for the Bears because I think that's appropriate, right? We had to wait a little bit longer on draft night to get that pick after that trade, and of course, I want to build a little bit of buffer here. So now you've had some time, the dust is settled. Tags, the Bears draft. Your grade.
I give them an A-, and it's a grade that I felt really good about giving when I was doing the draft grades yesterday. I don't know if I feel as good about it today. So the Bears, the news came out today that they cut Charles Leno, and they're going to play Tevin Jenkins at left tackle. That, I don't know how I feel about it. Tevin Jenkins is more of like a run blocker that I felt good about at right tackle. I don't know if I'm going to project him at left tackle in the NFL. To trade up for him there, it's a little worrisome. Now, again, it could work out okay, but again, you're playing someone out of the position that he played in college, so it's just a tough transition to make. Obviously, the trade up for Justin Fields was huge. Ryan Pace did what he had to do in this draft, and he made the trades that he needed to. He didn't mortgage his future. He helped the team in the future. He helped the team in the now. And where if Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace don't right the ship this year, Justin Fields gives them appeal,
right,
hiring a new head coach.
Sure.
A new head coach would want to come, work with Justin Fields. So it's someone that obviously entertains the fact of like Allen Robinson. Does he want to stay in Chicago now because he actually has a quarterback that might be able to throw him the ball? I felt like the Bears did good, drafting another interior lineman. Daz Newsome in the 6th round was a good value. Thomas Graham, the cornerback out of Oregon in the 6th round. I felt like that was a tremendous value, especially for a team that really has some question marks at corner. After releasing Kyle Fuller, signing Desmond Trufant, ask the Falcons, ask the Lions how that worked out. So unfortunately, it seems like he's going to start, whereas Thomas Graham, he's a guy that he should compete to try and earn that job in training camp. But in the 6th round, I think they made the most of that because, again, after making those trades up that they didn't have a pick in rounds 3 or 4, so they needed some of those day 3 hits. So I gave them an A- in this draft. I felt it was a very competent draft by Ryan Pace, and he did what he had to do.
Yates, you got your franchise quarterback. That was the main thing to get. Poor Andy Dalton, boy, everywhere he goes, he's like, yeah, you're going to play, Andy. Don't worry. It's going to be fine. It's just not really working out for him. Do you think that this was the appropriate amount to give up? Do you think that is going to save the Matt Nagy regime here? Or do you think this is just kind of, yes, it's the right call. Yes, they did this. And I guess the other question is, when are you going to see Fields on the field for the Bears?
This is all about giving Matt Nagy the ability to handpick his quarterback, right? He came in, Ryan Pace was the one who drafted Mitchell Trubisky. He made that ridiculous trade up with John Fox as the head coach. Nagy comes in apparently to fix Trubisky or to help him develop, and it just never happened, right? Because Trubisky never took those steps forward. So now this is all about Nagy, the quarterback whisperer, the alleged quarterback whisperer, being able to handpick his quarterback. So from a value perspective, love it. I think that being able to give up just a first-round pick next year, first-round picks are so volatile, right? So if you have the ability to be able to go up and get your guy, I'm perfectly fine with making that sacrifice to be able to give up that first-round pick next year. A fourth and a fifth, who cares? Those are just throw-in. You're not really going to get a guaranteed starter at that point. So being able to go up and get your quarterback who allows you to be able to compete. And here's the greater context of this is that Aaron Rodgers is threatening to leave Green Bay. Suddenly you have a division that now has Jared Goff in Detroit, Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, and Kellen Mond. We'll talk about him. And then in Green Bay, it would be Jordan Love. If Fields projects the way that and develops the way that we think he is, he's suddenly the best quarterback in this division within a year. So I think the plan is for Andy Dalton to be the starter this entire year with Matt Nagy, who was there and helped develop Patrick Mahomes that year that Alex Smith was the starting quarterback. That's going to be the model. As to how long that lasts, I'm not sure. So that's part of it where we have to evaluate that from a fantasy perspective. But outside of that, man, the entire draft for the Bears, absolutely loved it. Adding in guys like Khalil Herbert later on. Daz Newsome, who I loved on tape, thought he was the better North Carolina wide receiver. He didn't test as well, which is why he fell here to the 6th round. But he can be the starting slot receiver in this offense sooner rather than later. And then Kadarius Toney in the 7th round. This was one of my guys. Like, I absolutely love Tonga's tape at BYU. He's just a run-stuffing nose tackle. So I think that it was just a fantastic draft for Chicago, and they're getting all the praise in the national media, which is something that I am absolutely not used to.
Very uncomfortable for you guys. And I like when you guys are uncomfortable.
I'm gonna throw some shade here at Yates and the whole Nagy picking his guy. Part of the reason he said he came to Chicago was because he said he wanted to coach Trubisky. So,
well, you want to say that stuff.
No, hold on.
You do. Okay.
No, Nagy had a couple suitors. He could have went to a few different places. He chose Trubisky. And on top of that, Nagy's part of the reason Trubisky never developed because he didn't actually design an offense around Trubisky's strengths. And then
I wasn't aware he had many.
I'm gonna say pump the brakes. I'm gonna say pump the brakes on the best quarterback in the NFC North. Kirk Cousins is a very, very good quarterback.
I'm saying within a year.
He said within a year.
No, what I'm saying is I hope that Justin Fields turns out to be as good as Kirk Cousins. That's what I say. I hope. I don't expect him to be.
All right, that's fair enough. Let's move on to the Bengals, who had a chance to take Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater. Instead, they went full fantasy and took Jamar Chase from LSU with the 5th overall pick. Then they did take an offensive tackle in the 2nd round, Jackson Carman, followed by Osai, the defensive end from Texas, and then Cameron Sample, defensive end. So they doubled up on defensive end there in the 3rd and 4th, and then Tyler Shelvin from LSU, defensive tackle in the 4th, along with Dante Smith. A lot of picks here for the Bengals. Another offensive tackle there for him. So did the Bengals, in your opinion, Mike, do the right thing here? Because they did get Jamar Chase, and they did get their tackle. Would you have swapped? Would you have taken the tackle first and then the wide receiver, or do you think they got it right?
I think that they went with the right approach to begin with because they went Jamar Chase and they said, okay, it's a strong tackle class. We can get one in the 2nd round.
Right.
And then they got to the 2nd round and then said, hey, and then they got greedy. And then it was like, hey, we're going to trade back because we're still going to get a tackle.
All right. Did you think that the same thing, that they pushed a little too far?
Yeah, I completely agree. To be able to walk out of that 2nd round with Jackson Carman as your, who projects as a guard. So you're probably going to keep Jonah Williams at left tackle, Riley Reif at right tackle, and then Jackson Carman. I don't think that this offense, to be able to walk out of that 2nd round, I think Jackson had the opportunity to. As even Samuel who projects as a guard, so you're probably going to keep Jonah Williams at left tackle. I feel like would have been a much, much better pick than Jackson Carman there. So yeah, not a huge fan of that 2nd round pick, but adding Jamar Chase to this offense certainly helps. But the big winner here, outside of Joseph Osai and Tyler Shelvin, love the picks. Those were 2 of my guys. Absolutely loved the picks there. But the big winner for me is Joe Mixon, where you add in Chris Evans, Giovanni Bernard is gone. Joe Mixon now, and Zach Taylor came out after and said, Joe Mixon is going to be on the field for all 3 downs, and we never want him to come off the field. That's what I expected. That's what I was projecting. Now that we have that solidified, you add in Chris Evans in the 6th, who is super, super raw and is most likely going to be a special teams player. I am not concerned one bit about Joe Mixon and his workload in 2021.
We thought the Cleveland Browns were going to be taking an edge rusher maybe. Instead, they went with corner Greg Newsome, the 2nd from Northwestern. Then the 2nd, they took Owosu Koromoa, one of Tags' favorites, inside linebacker from Notre Dame. Anthony Schwartz in the 3rd, wide receiver from Auburn. James Hudson from Cincinnati, offensive tackle. And Tommy Tugaye from Ohio State. If I butchered the name, I apologize. The defensive tackle out of Ohio State. So, Tags, your thoughts here and grade for the Cleveland Browns.
The Browns were in consideration for one of the best drafts for me. I gave them an A-. I felt like they got 2 first-round players. Greg Newsome, when they drafted him in the first round, if we were grading solely on that, I probably would have gave them a C because I felt like it was average. So many people talked about cornerback being a need for them, and I was like, why is it a need? Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams are 2 solid prospects. It's just they haven't been healthy. Once they get on the field, it's like, I don't know if it's really a need. They signed Troy Hill in free agency too, so it's like, I didn't understand it, but knowing that they were able to get Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah with the 52nd pick, it's like, you guys just totally flipped everything because you guys did get a first-round cornerback, and then you filled the biggest need on your team with a linebacker, because I was sitting there watching him fall down the draft board. I'm like, Browns. They should have drafted him in the first round. So getting Owusu-Koramoah there in the second round on a team that has very few holes, and one of them being linebacker, they nailed that. I hated the Schwartz pick. Hated it. Like, I can't describe how much I hate that pick. He's a developmental wide receiver that was a track star. You don't throw the ball very often in this offense anyway. You don't really need that field stretcher like he is. He's got a long way to go as a wide receiver. It was just a team that doesn't have very much depth at wide receiver, so I understand wanting to take one, but him in the third round made no sense. Loved Hudson in the fourth round. Togiai, he was someone that I felt like interior defensive lineman, they needed to replace Larry Ogunjobi, and I think that was best case scenario having him fall to them in the fourth round, because he was someone that was also expected to go on day 2 of the draft. So again, I felt like this was a fantastic draft for them. I gave them an A-.
All right, that's pretty high grade there, Yates. Do you think that they measure up there, the Cleveland Browns?
Absolutely in agreement with Tags here, where Owusu-Koramoah in the second round is just an absolute steal. He fell because of the size concerns and just an unknown of where exactly you're going to play him. I don't care. You get him onto the field in this defense, and he is going to make an instant impact. With Greg Newsome, I actually understood this pick, where you can't rely on Denzel Ward or Greedy Williams, who've been banged up. So you get depth there. And now Troy Hill is your CB4 on this roster. Like, that's fantastic. John Johnson you added in free agency, like all of it. This entire offseason for the Browns is just amazing. So adding in Tommy Togiai there in the fourth round, huge fan of that. I was perfectly fine with the team taking him in the second round. Plays with low center of gravity. He has the leverage points, and he exploits it. I am a huge fan of that. So Anthony Schwartz, though, I wanted to touch on him really quick, where I am not a fan of this one either, where you spend pick number 91 on a guy who is your wide receiver 4? Rashard Higgins as wide receiver 3, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones, who you took in the 6th round last year, who showed some flashes. You did need to add speed, but it's like, where is he going to play? You don't really have that clear role for him in this offense unless they do, but I just don't think it's going to be anything significant to warrant that high of a pick. I think you could have got some speed later on in the draft with some of these other guys, Marquez Stevenson, take him in the 6th round, something like that. So Schwartz was a little bit of a reach, but outside of that, man, love the draft.
The corners went off the board pretty quick for the Cowboys and ended up pivoting to take Micah Parsons, linebacker, with their first pick. Then they went corner with Kelvin Joseph from Kentucky in the second, Osa Edigizua from the defensive tackle from UCLA, and then Chauncey Golston in the third as well, defensive end. And another corner, Nashawn Wright from Oregon State, Jabril Cox, inside linebacker, LSU. Basically, a whole lot of defense, which is really the need. The question is, Tags, did they get the right guys, not just bodies?
I gave them a C, and I can easily make a case for this grade to be higher, but I could also make a case for it to be lower. They took some guys with some off the field concerns on their first 2 picks with Micah Parsons and Kelvin Joseph, where if those guys stay on the field and they've grown from the mistakes they've made in the past and they stay on the field, those are going to look like genius picks. They're fantastic picks. Osa in the 3rd round, good pick. Jabril Cox in the 4th, that was a solid value. Semi Fehoko, I actually loved him out of Stanford. I feel like, and I said, he's not a guy you want to play right away. He was someone that I felt like there is a ceiling in there. It's take time to develop him. Unfortunately, he landed on a team that is probably going to lose Michael Gallup after this year, and it's like you get to sit behind Gallup, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and it's like you're learning from the best of the best. You're going to get to play with Dak Prescott. So I felt like it was a great landing spot for him, but there was a lot of stuff in between there where legitimately they were drafting guys that I have never heard of. And when that happens in the 3rd or 4th round, it's like, okay, I look at nearly 200 prospects. I would think that I'd be able to at least hear of these guys. So I felt like there were a lot of reaches in between there. But again, this all comes back to whether or not they hit on those early round picks. If those players still have some issues to work through, and something happens because of that, it's going to look like a terrible draft. I felt like this was a very boomer bust draft for the Cowboys, and I really have no issue with what they did, but I can't grade them too high because of the boomer bust nature that it is.
That's fair. Was it as boomer bust for you, Yates, when you look back at what the Cowboys came away with? Because clearly defense is where they went. That was what they needed to address, but it is kind of questionable, some of the choices that they made.
Absolutely. This is a very boomer bust draft, and I have a feeling that it's going to be more bust than it is boom. They addressed needs, right? Linebacker was a need where you don't pick up the fifth-year option on Leighton Vander Esch. Sean Lee retires. Jalen Smith has been, hasn't lived up to the hype of what we thought he would be. So, and that is apparently they place such a critical importance on that position, right? With high investments. Jalen Smith, a second round, Leighton Vander Esch, a first-round pick a few years ago. So I think that Parsons has the potential to be an all-pro. I absolutely do think that to be the case. In this defense, is that going to be the right spot? I don't know. Kelvin Joseph, I liked him. It fills a huge need for this team. But again, Tags mentioned that he's got some stuff that he has to straighten out. The Nahshon Wright pick, Tags was alluding to it. I follow the draft. Once the season ends, I follow the draft. I dive into it, and I am just all in. I had never heard of Nahshon Wright. I was listening to Lance Zierlein from NFL Network. He said that or NFL.com, he said that he had a 7th round grade UDFA grade on Nahshon Wright. So to get him here in the 3rd round is it's just poor value, right? It's poor value drafting. So yeah, I definitely think when we look back, I think it's going to be more bust than it is boom.
You can love the player, but, there's no reason to take a guy who might be a undrafted free agent in the 3rd round. All right, let's move on to the Denver Broncos, who took Patrick Surtain, the 2nd from Alabama, with the 9th overall pick. Then went running back with Javonte Williams, who we've talked about quite a bit. Then Quinn Meinerz from Wisconsin Whitewater, offensive guard there. Baron Browning from Ohio State, outside linebacker, and Caden Stearns from Texas, the safety. So, Tags, what's the grade for the Denver Broncos?
I gave them an A-. Felt like they had a really good draft. And it's weird because when they drafted Surtain at 9, I didn't really love the pick. I mean, it's weird though, right? I'm not going to ever severely downgrade a team's draft grade because they drafted a good player. Okay, I will criticize whether or not it was a need because you guys did sign Ronald Darby and Kyle Fuller in free agency. You drafted Michael Ojemudia in the 3rd round last year. You have Bryce Callahan on the roster. So it's like, it wasn't really a need, but again, they get a good player at number 9 in a pass first league. So I don't hate that pick, but then you get Javonte Williams in the 2nd round. You have Melvin Gordon coming up on the final year of his contract, still dealing with some question marks. Does he get suspended for his drinking and driving incident last year? Either way, Javonte Williams was a very good pick at the top of the 2nd round. Quinn Meinerz out of Wisconsin in the 3rd round, he was getting some buzz to go early on day 2. So I love that pick there. Baron Browning, I know Yates was really, really high on him. Linebacker, another need for them. They get him in the 4th round. Jamar Johnson in the 5th round as a safety. Upside there. And then Seth Williams in the 6th. Seth Williams was a big-bodied wide receiver. I was curious to see where he landed. Now, this is really not ideal for fantasy purposes because he's never going to see the field without an injury, but it gives them tremendous depth. I believe that this team is a quarterback away from doing big things in this league, and we keep hearing it, that Aaron Rodgers might be okay. Like, he would put the Broncos in one of the teams that he'd be willing to go to, and if this team is somehow able to pull off that trade...
They've got a lot there. Yates, do you think Javonte Williams will usurp at some point in time this season Melvin Gordon as the starter there?
Maybe not this season, but I think that he absolutely could next season, right? Where next season we see Melvin Gordon leaving free agency and Javonte Williams is the guy. I think that they're going to split carries this year, which isn't going to be ideal for fantasy purposes. So yeah, I'm not super excited about the immediate impact of Javonte Williams, but moving into next year, they clearly have a plan for him. They clearly fell in love with him. They traded up in front of Miami, who was set to take him, to be able to get him onto their roster. So love it. Baron Browning, Tags mentioned, I absolutely, in the 3rd round, absolutely love this pick. I think that he fills and solves their linebacker need, right? They had some guys, they were filling it with Josie Jewell. I think that they had some guys there who were capable, but Baron Browning just takes that over the top. I thought that he should have gone much earlier than that. Caden Stearns, Jamar Johnson, Seth Williams, Kerry Vincent Jr., down the list. It's just a fantastic draft. The outside context here is concerning with Justin Fields. You passed on Justin Fields when you have a quarterback need and you take Patrick Surtain. Now, I like Surtain, so that, it's not criticizing that pick, but it's taking into the greater context. If you look back here in a year and Justin Fields turns into the player that we think he could be, where you could have had that quarterback to compete with Patrick Mahomes in this division and the Chiefs, that's going to look like a really, really bad decision when now you're moving forward into, if you don't get Aaron Rodgers, this situation gets resolved in Green Bay. He doesn't come to Denver. Now you're moving forward with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. So without taking the outside context into consideration, it's a great draft. If you bring in that outside consideration and context and you say, okay, well, what happens if you don't get Aaron Rodgers? I think it's a little bit of a miss.
All right, before we move on, we've got to tell you about one of the most exciting offers in all of fantasy sports right now. So if you saw the NFL Draft live stream, you know where I'm going with this. In case you didn't, well, here's a chance for you to get involved with Underdog Fantasy. It's giving away a free $25 entry with every deposit here with us, okay, from now through tomorrow. It doesn't matter if you're an existing user, you make a deposit at the end of Tuesday, and what's going to happen is you're going to get a free $25 entry that you can use immediately. So it happens to be that they just released their new Best Ball Mania 2 tournament, and maybe the best contest in all of Best Ball. It's a really cool site. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you go. I just signed up for it today, and you can use your credit to enter that contest completely free, where you'll be competing for $3.5 million in total prizes, including a ridiculous $1 million to first place. So head over to UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code FantasyPros to get your free Best Ball Mania entry now. A free Best Ball Mania entry just for listening to us, the Fantasy Pros. So again, UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code FantasyPros. Come hang out and play a little best ball with us. Let's move on to the Detroit Lions here, who are trying to build for the future. So Tags, they got their offensive tackle there in Penny Sewell. They went defensive tackle back-to-back here after that, and then corner. So do you feel like that the Detroit Lions did a good job of starting the rebuilding process? Because that's what it kind of feels like we're at with Detroit. It's not just like a splash player. It's like, let's try to rebuild. And what they did was they started on the lines on both sides of the football, and that feels kind of like the right move.
It definitely was with Penny Sewell. You could argue the fact that they could have taken a quarterback there, but I think this team's going to be in the cellar. I think they're going to have another chance to draft a quarterback coming up in the year or two, honestly. So Penny Sewell, great pick. You're getting a sturdy left tackle. You're upgrading, even though it wasn't a need for them. You just don't find left tackles like Penny Sewell available. In the second round, Levi Onwuzurike, I like him, but here's my issue. Okay, in both that second and third round pick, they used 2 picks on interior linemen in a class that was a weak interior line class. There were other positions that you guys need help with. Linebackers specifically is a very big need for them. So I was a little, I don't know why they wouldn't have taken someone like Owusu Koromoa. Again, you may not know where he's going to play on the field, but guess what? You need help everywhere. And I mean everywhere. They ruined, like, Matt Patricia ruined that franchise. They have to rebuild that roster. So taking 2 interior defensive linemen in a weak class felt a little bad. Melifonwu in the 4th round as a corner, big-bodied guy. I think that he's a solid number 2 to have. I think he's someone that has a massive ceiling alongside of Jeffrey Okudah. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know Yates was big on him, comparing him to Robert Woods. That's a really good thing for Jared Goff because he can't throw the ball down the field. Do they play St. Brown in the slot right away? That's what I would assume they're going to do with Perriman and Tyrell Williams on the perimeter. I don't know how they're going to work it, but St. Brown, solid pick in the 4th round. He fell further than you thought. I like Jamar Jefferson, the running back, but it was a stupid pick. It was a stupid pick. I mean, again, the running backs they have on the roster are a strength. Right. It's a strength. You don't need to address it. Take a different position. Take a guy that you could bring into camp. Hopefully he pans out. If he doesn't, you cut him. But geez, I mean, I gave them a C+ because they did draft some good football players, but at the same time, they just, I don't know. It felt like some unnecessary picks in there.
Did they do enough towards the good side of rebuilding for you in this draft?
You see the strategy, which is let's take the best overall players and we'll figure it all out later. We know that we're heading into a multi-year rebuild. Love it. So Penny Sewell, Levi Onwuzurike, Lee McNeil, like all these are great picks. The best value pick in the entire draft, in my opinion, is Amon-Ra St. Brown there at 112 overall. To get him and fills a huge need for this roster. I will be drafting Amon-Ra St. Brown everywhere in fantasy football leagues here in 2021 because I think that he is going to see a ridiculous target share here.
There was a lot of attention on the Packers draft, of course, and they took a cornerback in the 1st round, a cornerback, just one, don't panic, everybody, not another quarterback. Eric Stokes from Georgia, then Josh Myers from Ohio State, the center. Then they did eventually take a wide receiver, Amari Rodgers. So the Packers draft, they did not end up moving Aaron Rodgers, at least not yet. Tags, what's the grade?
I gave them a C-, and I wanted to even go worse than that, but just because when you think about the Packers and you think about the things that they struggle with, you say they could not stop the run to save their lives. They were like the Lions last year when it came to stopping the run. This draft did absolutely nothing to help that. Absolutely nothing. And it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to capitalize on our strengths. Well, then why aren't you drafting Aaron Rodgers a receiver with one of your higher picks? They wait till the third round. And I like Amari Rodgers at that pick. I think that he's fantastic for them. I think that he could play that Randall Cobb role that they've used in that Aaron Rodgers used to have. He's versatile. He can line up in the backfield. There's a lot of things you could do with him. But again, this all comes back to the Packers not understanding their strengths and weaknesses and what team they have and ways to win a Super Bowl. Because you have to fix your weaknesses. You have to be a more complete team. Look at the Tampa Bay Bucks. That's a complete team. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a complete team. You do not have a complete team to sit here and go interior offensive line, wide receiver, interior offensive line. A cornerback in the first round, Eric Stokes, whatever. I actually thought Tyson Campbell was the better Georgia cornerback, but that's neither here nor there. Taking a cornerback there just felt to me like you could find a cornerback later in the draft, considering you already re-signed Kevin King for a year. Terrible. I don't know. It's just, again, going through it, and Kylan Hill in the 7th round. I like Kylan Hill, and I was really curious to see where he'd end up. The Packers don't need a running back. I mean, it's just... I don't know. Again, the biggest priority should have been we have to stop the run. We have an offense that's competent, and if as long as Aaron Rodgers is there, if Rodgers is gone, this team sucks. I'm sorry. They're not a good football team. But if Aaron Rodgers is back there, they needed to do something to stop the run, and unfortunately, they just didn't do that.
I don't know if there's anything else to add there, Yates. Do you have anything else to add on this one, or you want to just move on to the next team?
No, let's move on. But I think that just really quick, Josh Myers, love the pick. Tadarius Slayton, big boy on the interior. I think that he at least addresses it. I don't think that he's an impact player though. So, but yeah, I just think that it was kind of a lackluster draft, and for a lot of the reasons Tags mentioned.
All right, Houston didn't pick until the 3rd round, and they took a quarterback when they did pick, Davis Mills from Stanford. Nico Collins, you could see the guys shaking their heads right now on the YouTube channel, just shaking their heads with this pick. Nico Collins of Michigan, the wide receiver next, and then Brevin Jordan, the tight end out of Miami in the 5th, along with Garrett Wallow, inside linebacker from TCU. So wasn't much of a draft here for the Texans, so what's the grade on it?
It's a D. Bill O'Brien left this franchise in a bad spot. I understand that. I really, really, really do. And I feel bad for Texans fans. But at some point, you have to say, hey, it is what it is, and we're going to take control of that, and we're going to make this roster better. I can't say they've done that. I feel like they've assembled a roster full of the replacements, which they're all backup NFL players. And granted, NFL players are talented guys, but are these guys going to compete? I don't think so. I mean, I really don't. And then so you draft your 3rd quarterback after you sign Tyrod Taylor, after you trade for... can't remember his name right now because it's terrible. You trade for the Bengals backup quarterback,
Ryan Finley.
Ryan Finley.
Okay.
You trade for him, and then you draft Davis Mills. It's like, do you think Davis Mills is going to answer your quarterback question marks? Obviously, they're moving on from Deshaun Watson, and they didn't trade him when they probably should have. When he said, "I'm never going to play for your franchise again." Nico Collins in the 3rd round, fine, but again, wide receiver, who's throwing to him? You know, at least go the Lions route and say we're going to build the trenches. We're going to rebuild things. We lost J.J. Watt. We don't have a pass rush. A lot of problems here. Brevin Jordan fell in the draft because people said they don't think that he's a football player. They think he's an athlete, but he's not a football player. Tight end was not a need for the Texans. It's a convenience position as far as I'm concerned for them. Terrible draft. Terrible.
Yates, are you as down on the Houston Texans draft as Tags is?
This is rough, man, because you look at their first pick that they make, and they got scared, right? You look at that run with Kyle Trask going to Tampa Bay at the back end of the 2nd round, then Kellen Mond, and then you have Davis Mills sitting there, and this is a wasted pick. This is an absolutely wasted pick where you can look at this roster and you need to add starters. In the 3rd round, you can get interior offensive linemen. You can get interior defensive linemen. You can get other players that you can find here to be starters for your long-term rebuild. Davis Mills, if you're going to be as bad as we all think you are, you're going to be picking with the number 1 overall pick in 2022. Yep. You're moving Deshaun Watson. If this situation clears out, you're going to get draft picks back for him. Get your quarterback then. Don't take Davis Mills. Get a starter somewhere else. So Davis Mills, I don't think that he was anywhere. I don't think that he should have been drafted in the 3rd round or the 4th round. 5th round, I was fine with taking him. Here at this spot for Houston specifically, hate the pick.
All right, let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts, who selected Kwity Paye, defensive end from Michigan, with their first pick in the second round. Odeyingbo, I knew I was going to butcher it. Odeyingbo, Deo Odeyingbo. I knew it was going to happen, and I got in my head about it, and then it happened. So this is what happens when you hit the 50-minute mark in the podcast, and then you say it one more time, because I want to make sure I always get it right from now.
Dio Odeyingbo.
Dio Odeyingbo. Thank you very much. I apologize, Mr. Odeyingbo and Mrs. Odeyingbo. I did not want to butcher your son's name. Kylan Granson then taking the tight end from SMU, and Sean Davis, a much easier name to say, from Florida, the safety. So, Tags, what is your grade here for the Indianapolis Colts, a team that didn't have a whole lot of needs per se, but I know you're not as big on Kwity Paye as I am.
I felt like they had a few needs. Edge rusher was one of them, so I give them credit for taking a couple edge rushers. However, offensive tackle was the biggest one for me. I felt like the edge rushers, it was not a strong class. You can get them later. Like, Dio Odeyingbo was awesome. Love that pick. Really do. Kwity Paye, meh. I'm not high on Kwity Paye, but again, it was a need, so it wasn't that. But it was more about you guys didn't draft an offensive tackle. Like,
right.
Are you guys cool at Sam Tevi protecting Carson Wentz? I mean, did you guys watch Philadelphia last year? Did you see what happened when Carson Wentz has no protection? It's bad. It's really bad. So I thought that they were going to prioritize left tackle, that they were going to try and find someone in this draft. They didn't do that, and that's why they get a C- from me, because, again, even Sam Ehlinger in the 6th round, I didn't understand that pick. Now, again, it's a 6th-round pick. It's not like these are they're not starters. Right. But at the same time, you drafted Jacob Eason last year in the 4th round. You have Carson Wentz with a lot of money. So, I mean, I'm guessing you're going to carry 3 quarterbacks on game day? Probably not. So, I mean, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. So, again, I understand the edge rusher, taking a couple of those guys. It's a very important position. They needed help there. That's fine. But Sam Tevi is your left tackle. I just hope Carson Wentz doesn't die.
Now, Odeyingbo and Kwity Paye, both obviously, with the pass rush being something to improve on. Was this a market improvement now, year over year, in your mind, Yates?
I don't know if I would say that, because Justin Houston leaving is an impact player, and
right.
Replacing him with Kwity Paye, who needs some development, and then Odeyingbo coming off of his Achilles injury. That's a huge part of this, right? So I just don't know if he's even going to play in 2021. He has a high ceiling, but you're going to have to wait until 2022 to probably get that. So yeah, it definitely is a Chris Ballard Colts draft. You look at the guys that they drafted, it fits the prototypes. They stick true to their culture, right? Like, you could see that all throughout their draft, but it just wasn't guys that I thought markedly improved their team year over year.
All right, the Jacksonville Jaguars, this is hopefully the draft where this franchise goes in a whole new direction. Trevor Lawrence, obviously the first pick, then Travis Etienne from Clemson. So the Clemson boys get reunited in the NFL. Tyson Campbell, the cornerback from Georgia, which Tags mentioned earlier, he thought he was the better of the 2 corners from Georgia. Walker Little from Stanford, offensive tackle. Andre Cisco from Syracuse, the safety. Look, the Jaguars had a lot of picks here, boys. You know this, I know this. When all is said now and done, when you look back at what they were able to acquire, how much of a game changer, Tags, do you think this draft might be for this franchise? What's the grade on it?
Well, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, as soon as you make that pick, you're getting an A+. So it can only go down from there.
Well, I guess here's the question. Did it go down from there?
Sadly, it did a little bit. Taking Travis Etienne with a 1st-round pick, I understand. Etienne's a very good football player. No issues with that. My issue is that running back is a very convenience position. Like, you have to be in a position as a franchise to be able to take a running back in the 1st round. The Pittsburgh Steelers think that they can compete this year, and they think that they're a running back away from doing that. That's why they draft Najee Harris. The Jaguars, I think you just have to step back and admit, we're not going to be a major competitor. I guess in this division, it's possible that they are. But I feel like Urban Meyer, after the draft, said Travis Etienne is going to be the 3rd down back for us, that we're going to have James Robinson and Carlos Hyde and 1-2 down. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because if you actually mean that, that means you drafted a 3rd down back in the 1st round. Congratulations. You're now the worst head coach in the football. But he's not. He's not going to be the 3rd down back. He's going to work his way into that starting role. James Robinson will be mixed in, sure. Again, good football player, so I can't dock them completely, but it's a convenience position in the 1st round. Shouldn't have done it. Tyson Campbell, liked him better than Eric Stokes. I dig that pick. They didn't need cornerback, but again, you take the best player on the board, and he was the best player on the board. I dug that pick. Walker Little, if they're high on him, they could let Cam Robinson walk next year. Andre Cisco. This makes the Tyson Campbell pick even better for me, because now you have these cornerbacks and CJ Henderson, Tyson Campbell. You have some depth at cornerback. Cisco is not a guy that you want basically just watching over the top of the defense that you're going to trust if a guy gets beaten man coverage. He's a ball hawk. He's going to take risks. He's going to screw you at times. But I love it. I wanted him to go to a team that had really good cornerback play, and I think that the Jags are going to. So I did like what the Jaguars did mostly. I gave them a B+ in this draft. I don't think it was a flawless draft, but again, this goes back to the idea of taking Etienne there in the end of the first round. It's just taking a running back in the first round. Your team should really be set up for success. Like right now, if you're going to make that pick, like the Chiefs doing it last year, I didn't mind because that was a complete roster. If the Bucs did it this year, I wouldn't have minded. They had a complete roster. The Bills, complete roster competing right now. But the Jags, you guys are rebuilding.
All right, Yates, when you look back now, this pairing of Etienne and Trevor Lawrence, I mean, from a fantasy perspective, certainly the comfortability factor is going to be huge, I think, for Trevor Lawrence right away. I don't buy the whole third down back thing either. I mean, you don't take somebody in the first round to do that. That's a big load of nonsense. So selfishly, from a fantasy perspective, I really like this, especially from a dynasty kind of draft perspective.
Yeah, if you take it's split into two conversations, right? If you take the football aspect of it, spending that first round pick on a running back, like Tags mentioned, for all the reasons he mentioned, where you're not a complete roster, you're not ready to compete right now, it doesn't make much sense. From a fantasy perspective, yeah, sign me up, because now he's reunited with Trevor Lawrence. He knows how to catch passes from him. He's very familiar with it. He's a perfect complement to James Robinson. I do think that he's going to take the majority of the work here. And then he brings speed. And Urban Meyer wanted to add speed here to this roster. He wanted Kadarius Toney. He's come out and said that he wanted Kadarius Toney there at 25. And we'll talk about Toney and where he landed. But Etienne brings that same level of explosiveness where they needed that at the running back position. So I get it. There really wasn't that level of speed anywhere else in a refined running back throughout this draft. So spending it, I understand it. But outside of that, man, they got some really good players. Tyson Campbell, Andre Sisco, J2 Fele, Jordan Smith out of UAB. Like, all these guys are really, really solid players. So I think it's a solid building block. Did they reach in some position at some spots? Sure. But regardless, I do think that they improved their roster year over year.
All right, Kansas City didn't have a first-round pick. They had two in the second, Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey, the inside linebacker from Missouri, Bolton and Humphrey, the center from Oklahoma. So what kind of grade do you want to put on this Kansas City draft here, Tags?
They crushed it. A- for them. You kind of have to factor in they traded that first round pick for Orlando Brown. Now they have their left tackle to go from Eric Fisher now to Orlando Brown. It's like, this might be better. They rebuilt their offensive line throughout this offseason. In here they add Creed Humphrey. He's going to play center for them immediately. Trey Smith in the late rounds. There was some medical stuff that popped up with him, but if he's healthy, that's a freaking steal.
In the sixth round, no less.
Yeah. It was a steal. I'm a big fan of Cornell Powell. I think that he was someone that, he was playing behind a bunch of really good wide receivers at Clemson, and then once he finally got a shot in the starting lineup, he was fantastic. And yes, he played with Trevor Lawrence. Now he's going to play with Patrick Mahomes at a Chiefs depth chart that has absolutely nobody on it. Nick Bolton was a guy that he's kind of faded for whatever reason during the draft cycle because he was considered a borderline first-round pick, and then he fell in the second round. Position of need. Nick Bolton, high energy linebacker. I don't think there's any bust potential there. Will he ever reach the ceiling that some people project? Maybe not. But I felt like this was an awesome draft. I feel like the Chiefs are just allowing them to rebuild the offensive line the way that they did this offseason. They're just cheating. And they get an A- in this draft. And this team, they're going to be back in the Super Bowl.
Yates, did the rich get richer here for the Chiefs?
This offensive line heading into 2021 might be better than what they had in 2020 and the years previous. Like Orlando Brown, it's going to be an adjustment for him. Like I made the joke right when he got traded, he's going to walk into the building and be like, what's this passing the football thing that you guys do over here? Like he's so used to running the football, So I think he's going to have an adjustment period, but Joe Thuney, Kyle Long coming out of retirement as a guy that you can plug in and feel confident. Creed Humphrey. You have Laurent Duvernay-Tardif coming back. Like, that is fantastic. Trey Smith, who I was a big fan of. Yes, he dropped because of the medicals, but as long as you're willing to take on that risk, this is fantastic. So I love the draft here for Kansas City.
The Chargers got lucky a little bit because Rashawn Slater dropped all the way to 13. This was exactly, I think, what we all thought they needed to do. And then in the second round, they came away with Asante Samuel Jr., Josh Palmer in the third round, wide receiver from Tennessee, and then Trey McKitty, the tight end from Georgia in the first three rounds. So, Tags, when you look back on the Chargers draft, what grade did they come away with?
I give them a B+, and honestly, I could easily make that like an A-. Rashawn Slater in the first was a no-brainer. It was like run up there and take him. Like, why is he still available at 13? That was an easy pick for them. So easy. Then you get to the second round, it's like, what's the second biggest need we have? It's corner. Asante Samuel Jr., he's got football in his blood. You know what I mean? His dad was a good football player. There was no reason that he should have fallen much further. Honestly, I felt like they got him at a tremendous value. Josh Palmer was a late riser up draft boards, But I'll tell you what, when I watch Josh Palmer, I like what I see. And if this team moves on from Mike Williams, I think you're going to see a future fantasy relevant football player is what you're going to see that's tied to Justin Herbert. The pick I didn't like, I actually didn't like the next two picks. Trey McKitty, tight end out of Georgia, at the end of the third round. It's like, this was a terrible tight end class, and no one should have been reaching for any tight ends. I know they have tight end as a need, but again, we don't need to reach a tight end, especially in the third round. Yates has already talked about it, that you can get starting caliber players in the third round. There were still some great players on the board at that point. Chris Rumph, the edge out of Duke, again, he was more like a 6th, 7th round pick in my book. So, Larry Rountree, I want to mention that one. When I watched him, I think he's going to be better than Joshua Kelly in that timeshare role if they give him the opportunity. Now, he's only 6th round draft equity, whereas Joshua Kelly was 4th. But clearly, by taking him there, that's competition. That's absolute competition. So he's someone that I actually dug in the 6th round. So a B plus that it could be discussed where it might be an A minus. I just hated the 3rd and 4th round picks they made.
All right. So the Chargers' new regime in here. How do you think they did, Yates?
I'm glad that you mentioned the new regime because that's important with Joshua Kelly and Larry Rountree from the fantasy perspective, where this new regime has no connections whatsoever to the coaching staff, has no connections to Joshua Kelly. They can move forward and they can say, with Rountree, we like what we see. He beat Kelly out in camp. Let's plug him into the starting lineup alongside Austin Eckler. And then suddenly Larry Rountree is a very, very fantasy relevant option. So I'm eyeing him in Dynasty rookie drafts. I've got my eye on Larry Rountree there as a late pick that I think could pay off. The first two picks, like Tags mentioned, Rashawn Slater, Asante Samuel, love the picks. After that, kind of fell off. The wheels kind of fell off there. Not a huge fan of the rest of their draft. But outside of that, man, I think it was a really good draft.
I think the Rams started off in a strange way going with wide receiver there
in
the second round. I think we could all agree on that. Tutu Atwell, Louisville wide receiver, their first pick in this draft in the second round, 25 overall. Then Ernest Jones, inside linebacker from South Carolina, and Bobby Brown III from Texas A&M, defensive tackle. And they had a couple picks in the 4th after that. Michel, cornerback from Central Arkansas, and Harris, Jacob Harris, the wide receiver from UCF. So Tags, this, I don't know. This was strange to me. I'm never sure what to think of the Rams. You know, the Rams do things sometimes, and I go, "Oh, this is a great idea. What a good move this is." And other times, when you'll look back at certain drafts, you go, "What were you thinking about that?" So, what are you thinking about the Rams now that you have time to look at this whole draft?
I mean, this is a candidate for worst draft of the year.
It's terrible, right?
Honestly, I it makes no sense. You have Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Deshaun Jackson, Van Jefferson, and it just felt extremely unnecessary to draft 3 wide receivers here, especially Tutu Atwell in the 2nd round. I mean, come on, man. Are you expecting him to learn from Deshaun Jackson? Is that your plan? I think Van Jefferson's a better wide receiver.
I agree.
But again, you know, I don't think the Rams have been a good team because they draft good players. I think that the Rams have been a good team because they're well coached. So, you know, they'll get the most out of their players, which is fine. But in terms of, they could have done a lot better. This team could have been a lot better. But looking at their draft picks, even Rochelle in the 4th round, like, I had him as a day 3 guy, like far into day 3. This was terrible. I mean, I know that they didn't have a lot of picks. They didn't have a lot of high picks. So it's understandable that you're not going to feel great about their draft. But at the same time, if you don't care and you're just going to throw a bunch of darts at the board, keep trading back. Trade out of that 257 pick. Don't draft Tutu Atwell there.
Yates, you know, Tags brings up an interesting point, which is, you know, they can coach anybody and what they bring in, all that stuff. But with all the cap issues that I think like the Rams have, wouldn't you like to just hit on some guys with some talent and fill some spots? It feels like that's more of a necessity, isn't it?
Oh, my word. This pick at 57, I could just talk about this pick all day long because it is so bad. And I really, you know, like I was thinking about this earlier today. I was like, I wonder if Les Snead, you know, did like a Siri talk to text. And he was like, draft Terrace Marshall. Okay, drafting Tutu Atwell. You're like, no,
not that. Don't do that.
Right. I mean, 149-pound wide receiver in the 2nd round, who I had a 6th round grade on. This guy should not have been drafted anywhere near. I don't think he had any competition. I don't think the Rams had any competition for Tutu Atwell here in the 2nd round, let alone 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th. So this is just a massive, massive reach. Jacob Harris, wide receiver out of UCF, 6'4", 210. They're going to try to convert him to a tight end. Why? Like, why? You have Tyler Higbee there. You drafted Bryson Hopkins last year. Like, this is now your 3rd tight end that you're going to try to add 20 to 30 pounds onto. Like, it makes zero sense across the board for this. So the Rams keep trading away their 2021 or their 1st round picks into the future. They haven't made one for like 10 years. Good, because I think that the picks would be even worse. So, man, I just think if you can't draft well, then trade your picks away. Trade them for proven veterans. And yeah, Tags is absolutely right. They're good because they're well coached, not because they draft well.
I feel like we're gonna hit a spot here in this show because next up is the Raiders, and they selected.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
So we're in a mood now. We've turned over into the hour of the show. That mark is already come and gone, and now here we go into the meat and potatoes. Alex Leatherwood, offensive tackle, selected with the 17th overall pick. Then Trevin Mooring from TCU, the safety in the second. Then the Raiders took Malcolm Kuntz, outside linebacker from Buffalo, and then Divine Diablo. Great name, by the way, one of my favorite names of the draft, the safety from Virginia Tech. So, Tags, what's the grade for the Las Vegas Raiders?
They got a D+,
Cool.
and it was saved by Trayvon Merrick in the second round. Like, it really was, because he was a guy that I had as a top 15 overall player in this draft, and, you know, they could have took him at 17, wouldn't have blinked. They could have taken Alex Leatherwood in the second round, and it would have been like, okay, that's probably around where he should go. But they did it opposite, and it was like, okay, those two offset, where it's like, all right, you guys got lucky. It wasn't due to good drafting. It was due to, like, literally, you guys got lucky he fell to you there. And then Malcolm Kuntz and Divine Diablo, those were both day 3 guys. Like, they really were. Like, you could argue that Diablo was someone that was like 4th round maybe, but they were reaches. You know, they had 2 picks back to back there. Nobody on their draft board, like outside of Merrick, I don't like this draft. It just did not feel good to me. And this is really what Mike Mayock has done. He's taken the guys they have conviction on. He's talked about that before, saying, you know, if you have conviction on a guy, you take him in the first round. You don't really worry about the draft slot and all that stuff. But it's just, it didn't feel
conviction
great.
is one thing, but like we've pointed out with a couple teams, why are you reaching when you could take other board and still get your guy when other guys are on the board? Yates, this is another one where I think we both, that night we were puzzled, and I think it didn't get any easier for us afterwards.
Oh my word. Alex Leatherwood in the first round. I legitimately just do not know how you sit down, watch tape, and come to the conclusion that you want Alex Leatherwood over someone like Tevin Jenkins, or Samuel Cosme, or some of these other guys. Like, I just absolutely have zero idea how you sit down and watch tape and come to the conclusion that Alex Leatherwood is a better prospect and worth taking in the first round, let alone at number 17 overall. Trayvon Merrick is, you're absolutely right, Tex. He saved this draft for the Raiders. 3 safeties taken. Now, do they move Divine Diablo to a linebacker? He's a bigger guy, so I think that's their plan, that they want to move him to linebacker. But again, that's not someone that you take there in the 3rd round. You know, Malcolm Kuntz, I saw someone make a joke. I can't remember who it was, but someone say, like, do you think the Raiders took Malcolm Kuntz in the 3rd round simply because they saw that he played at Buffalo and they had a good experience with Khalil Mack, you know, like out of Buffalo. Like, so all of this, man, just goes together to be a very, very poor draft class. It's just, I don't understand it whatsoever. I don't know what the Raiders are doing this offseason. I think that Mike Mayock is on his way out within the year. John Gruden's going to get to stay because he has that 10-year, $100 million contract. He should not be there.
The Miami Dolphins have done a lot of good things in these last few years. Jalen Waddle, the first pick for them in this year's draft. Then Jalen Phillips, the defensive end, was their other pick in the first round. They had a few second-round picks also where they took Javon Holland, the safety from Oregon, and Liam Eichenberg, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame. Then in the 3rd round took Hunter Long, the tight end from Boston College. So they had a lot of picks, a little top-heavy, 1st and 2nd round. Did the Dolphins do enough with those picks in your opinion, Tex?
Yeah, I went with a B- for them. You know, they had 5 picks, 5 of the top 81 picks. So when you have that many picks, your draft should look really, really, really good. Jalen Waddle at 6 overall. You know, I would have taken Devontae Smith. I felt like he would have been the better play for me. But either way, Waddle's a fantastic receiver, so I'm not going to fault them for that pick. Jalen Phillips is at number 18. You know, he was the top edge rusher on some boards. It just came down to whether or not he passed the physical portion after retiring due to concussions. Javon Holland, taking him with Trayvon Merrick on the board. Again, it just blows my freaking mind that they went that high with Holland. I had a 3rd round grade on Holland. I wasn't very high on him. I know a lot of people expected him to go in the 2nd round, but this was at the top of the 2nd round, and there was still much better talent on the board. Eichenberg, decent pick. Again, offensive tackles were flying off the board, so they kind of needed to get ahead of that. They didn't address running back until the 7th round, so it seems like they're cool working with Myles Gaskin, which is fine with me. running back is, unless you're getting an elite talent, I don't feel like you need to reach a running back.
And Gaskin played well at times last year.
Yeah. So I feel like it was a competent draft for him, slightly above average, because I think that like B-, C+, that's like an average territory. So I give them a B-. I feel like it was an average draft.
I kind of felt the same way, Gates. Is it 3 for 3 that, maybe our expectations were too high? I don't know. But how it ended up shaking out just felt like it was a little left wanting at the end of the day. Like they did okay, but it feels like for what they had in terms of draft capital, they maybe should have come away with more.
I'm going to disagree with you guys here. I loved this draft from Miami. Jalen Waddle at 6 with his speed, reuniting him with Tua Tagovailoa. You get him into the slot. You allow him to be utilized how Henry Ruggs should be utilized. I love that. Jalen Phillips was my edge 1 in this class. Love it. I actually had Javon Holland as safety 1 in this class for me. I really liked Javon Holland, what he brought to the table. I thought that he was kind of a poor man's Jamal Adams. He definitely does not play with the same intensity, the same, athleticism, but I thought that he could fill a very similar role. Liam Eichenberg, I was very high on. So to get him at these spots, to get these key players to fill huge needs for your roster, I thought was great.
All right, let's move on to the Vikings, who took Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle from Virginia Tech, with their first pick, and then did not pick again until the third round, where they had 4 picks. Kellen Mond, the quarterback from Texas A&M, Chaz Surratt, a linebacker we've talked about quite a bit from North Carolina, Wyatt Davis, offensive guard from Ohio State, and Patrick Jones, the second defensive end from Pittsburgh. So what grade do the Vikings get from this 21 draft here, Tags?
I give them a B+. I felt like they had a decent draft. I felt like it could have been better. I didn't think they got enough value for trading away that number 14 pick. To move back 9 spots in the first round and not get a first round pick back in return. They got the number 66 and number 86 picks. I mean, they didn't even get a second round pick. No. So to me, it didn't feel like they got enough in return for that pick to move back 9 spots. But again, they took Darrisaw, someone that they were probably considering at number 14 overall. So that was a solid trade back. Mond, I felt like they were going to draft a backup quarterback because they didn't have one on the roster. Kirk Cousins is always on this guaranteed contract, and they keep doing these couple of years, and they're going to do that. But they needed someone competent in the back end. Chaz Surratt, love him as a linebacker. Now, they didn't need a linebacker at all. It's one of the better linebacker units in football. But again, developing him, someone that's still learning the position because he's switching over from quarterback. Wyatt Davis in the third, Patrick Jones at the end of the third. I felt like they made good picks. I just felt like there was a little bit more they could have done, or even trade some of these 3rd and 4th round picks to move back up into the 2nd to get a more impact player. I believe these are all solid players and they address some needs, but at the same time, it's like you have a bunch of just solid players where I can't look at this and say that's a can't miss pick. That's a fantastic, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Is Yates for you, Mond, a project that is going to be successful potentially with the Vikings, where he's got some time there to just kind of learn, because the arm strength is there, the accuracy I think sometimes is the question. But we've seen sometimes these Texas A&M guys, kind of emerge with the big arms.
Potentially. I think that I liked Mond more than Mac Jones and more than Kyle Trask. And
right.
It was pretty close. I had Mond as QB5. So I don't hate the selection here. In the beginning of the 3rd round, you need a backup quarterback to begin with. And then you're looking for that potential, long-term solution there behind Kirk Cousins. So Kellen Mond here in the 3rd round, I didn't mind it at all. Ihmir Smith-Marsette is the guy that I wanted to mention there. They got him in the 5th round. Keep an eye on him for fantasy purposes. I really liked what I saw out of his tape. And now there's an actual path for him to get onto the start, onto the field here in year 1. Maybe not year 1, but if Adam Thielen is injured or they move on from Thielen next year, Smith-Marsette could step in as a starter in this offense. So I'm keeping an eye on him.
All right, the New England Patriots got their quarterback of the future? I don't know. I'm going to do that Yates thing you did before, where I'm going to ask the question. Question mark? Mac Jones from Alabama. Then with the 2nd round, they moved up to take Christian Barmore, which I loved this pick. This made me very excited as a Patriots fan. Defensive tackle there from Alabama. Ronnie Perkins from Oklahoma, defensive end. Then Rhamondre Stevenson, the running back from Oklahoma, who a lot of people have kind of put some LeGarrette Blount kind of tags on. So Tags, how do you want to tag this New England draft?
I felt like Mac Jones fell into their laps at 15, and it was like a situation where I felt like they had to take him. And I think it was a smart pick for the Patriots in terms of what Josh McDaniels can run, what he did with a pocket passer with Tom Brady. Christian Barmore trading up for him, felt like he's a fantastic pick for that team, as is Ronnie Perkins. Perkins is someone that it was a perfect Belichick pick, you know what I mean? I just feel like he can do the hybrid 3-4-4-3 thing that they like a lot. Stevenson was the pick that really threw off the draft for me, because I was like, why? You guys have Damian Harris in the roster, you have Sony Michel.
I don't know if they're going to have Sony Michel in the roster. That's one that I think you got to keep an eye on.
If you drafted Rhamondre Stevenson to replace Sony Michel, I think it's even a worse pick. Sony Michel is not great, is not as great as some people thought he might be, but he's better than Stevenson by far. Stevenson's a great running back 10 years ago, 15 years ago in the league maybe, but he's less athletic than LeGarrette Blount in my opinion. So, but then the rest of the draft was kind of like, it was fine. I gave them a B+. I think it was a solid draft by them, and typically I don't like the Patriots drafts. I legitimately have graded them tough.
Typically they failed in these drafts. I mean, they have not drafted I think like I said someday, they haven't drafted a first round Pro Bowler in like over like 15 years or something like that. It was crazy like how bad these drafts have been for them, especially early. The first round picks are ones that typically either they trade out or they've just whiffed on.
But I'm not even talking about in hindsight saying, oh, they haven't drafted well.
No, I know.
Like when the drafts happen, I don't like their drafts typically. In this draft, it felt like some certain players fell to them where it's like Mac Jones. I wasn't a big fan, but at 15, it's fine. And then Barmore getting him at the top of the second round, developmental a little bit, but I think Belichick's the guy to develop him. Perkins, again, I like those first 3 picks they made. From there, it's like, okay, not great. But at the same time, when you need to hit most, they did. So I gave them a B+.
All right. Do you think that they hit on some value here? I love them moving up to get Barmore. That to me is, certainly push that grade up higher. But look, I know you've been the guy who has never been the biggest fan of Mac Jones, but are you kind of where Tags is, which is like, hey, he falls to you there. It's a no-brainer. You take that shot.
I love the Barmore trade up. Absolutely love that selection for his upside. I cannot wait for the training camp pictures of Cam Newton and Mac Jones standing side by side. I cannot wait for it because you cannot find two more.
Are you saying that he is not a physical specimen? Is that what you're trying to say?
All I'm saying is I can't wait to see the pictures. So I think it's a fine pick when you look back and you say Mac Jones fell into your lap, or this was kind of the range that he should have been going all along. He's a quarterback. You have some insurance there if Cam Newton cannot stay healthy. You can, but it's a dramatic pivot of the offense. Like you're going to have to. What they're going to have to do is they're going to have to play Cam Newton if he doesn't work out until their bye week. And then you're going to have 2 full weeks to move the entire offense from Cam Newton and his mobility over to Mac Jones and his statue in the pocket, right? So it's going to be a dramatic shift. I just don't know if we're going to see Mac Jones on the field this year. So, but outside of that, I think that they did make some good picks. Ronnie Perkins, I'm a big fan of. Cameron McGrone, he's a perfectly defined developmental linebacker that you can lean on his athleticism and hope that he hits. So I think all of it, it's a fine draft. I think they did well.
Well, they needed to, because we all could say that the last few drafts for them have not been good. All right, I don't know how long we're going to spend on New Orleans here. Peyton Turner with the first pick. We were all shaking our heads on that one. Defensive end from Houston. Pete Werner, inside linebacker from Ohio State. They took it in the second round, and then the Saints took Paulson Adebo, the cornerback from Stanford, in the third, and then Ian Book, the quarterback from Notre Dame. What's your grade tags on the New Orleans Saints?
I give them a C. Peyton Turner, I didn't hate as much as everybody else did. I thought it was fine. I don't think they got good value on him. Apparently, there were teams that were targeting him in the second round. So again, if you have a conviction at the end of the first round, the Saints didn't have a pick again until the end of the second. They probably wouldn't have got him. So I didn't hate the pick. Pete Werner, a very low upside linebacker, which is fine. They have other linebackers on the team. He's going to need to play right away, but at the same time, they don't need him to be the guy at linebacker. Adebo filled some depth. Ian Book, that was a stupid pick in my book. I didn't understand when they made it. I still don't understand it now, especially when they're choosing between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, two guys they're paying money. Again, it just seemed like a bad pick to me. I gave them a C. I felt like it was a very average draft, maybe even a little bit under, just because they didn't get value on really any of their picks.
Do you see the same thing with a lack of value?
Yep, completely. The Ian Book pick was so puzzling to me in the fourth round. I would have been fine with the team taking the shot on him as a conversion player in the seventh round, but for the fourth round, what are you doing? And this was when I sat down, I thought that they still had Tommy Stevens on the roster from last year. If you guys remember that story coming out of last year, where he was a Taysom Hill clone, right? He was going to be this special teams guy. This is what Ian Book is. You're not going to rely on him to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's not going to happen. Sorry, spoiler alert, not going to happen for Ian Book. So he's like this Taysom Hill mobility guy that Sean Payton apparently just loves. I do not understand it. You could have waited 3 rounds and gotten Ian Book. No one was going to take him.
Well, let's talk about the New York Giants. They took Kadarius Toney with their first pick, And we failed because, guys, we had that big giant conversation about all the wide receivers, and I think we just neglected at the time to remember that John Ross is still there too. They had signed him this offseason. Then we were talking about Shepard, we were talking about Slayton, all the other guys. They've got a ton of wide receivers there. I don't know what the plan is. Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, outside linebacker, in the second round. Then Aaron Robinson from UCF, the cornerback there. So your grade for the Giants here, Tags.
I gave them a B-, and I know some people are upset about that because they did draft some decent players, and a lot of people feel like they got good value. I love the value they got for trading with the Bears. The Bears gave them plenty, right, in terms of what they got in return, a future first-round pick, a couple fourth, fifths. It was very good value to move back to 20, especially considering they were going to draft Javonte Smith, weren't getting him, made the smart move backing out. And then it's like Kadarius Toney at 20, really? I mean, I think the next team you had to potentially worry about taking him was the Saints at 28. So I would have preferred them to trade back again if they really wanted Toney. But knowing that Rashod Bateman was on the board, like, he's a slot receiver. Elijah Moore was on the board. So if for whatever reason Toney does go, it's like you can fall back and say we're going to take Elijah Moore. I just felt like it was, I mean, even if you want to go further down and say Rondale Moore. Again, right, these guys were guys that you could have had instead of taking him at 20. Ojulari, I was not high on. Now, however, he was someone that was getting first-round buzz, so getting him at 50 was a solid pick. They need edge rusher help. Aaron Robinson, solid cornerback. Think he's going to play more of a slot role in the NFL. Rodarius Williams in the 6th, I thought that was a good pick. He was someone I actually had a 4th-round grade on, so I love that pick down there. Their cornerback room is looking really good right now. So I did like their draft. It's just I felt like it could have been a lot better in terms of, like, moving down again. The Kadarius Toney, that's the number 1 pick. That's the one you have to hit on, and I just don't know if they're going to hit on that pick.
Yates, did the Giants miss opportunity here?
I'm a little confused by the Toney pick as well. Just because, not because I don't think Toney was, I think he was a late first, early second round player. Like, I think that was kind of where he was going to go. He still has plenty to develop on. But now it's the fit here in this offense where you're like, you guys are still, if the offensive philosophy is still to, like, lean on your defense, lean on the run game, why are you investing so much in the wide receiver position when you have some needs elsewhere? So it's like, now Toney, Kenny Golladay, you have Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, John Ross. I think Dante Pettis is still on this roster. Like, Saquon Barkley out of the backfield, Evan Engram, Kyle Rudolph. Like, this is suddenly a loaded offense. And it's like, where's the true fit? How are you going to utilize and get value out of Kadarius Toney for him to be worth that number 20 overall pick? Azeez Ojulari at pick 50, love it. I think that's fantastic value for him, and they filled a huge need there with edge. Aaron Robinson, solid pick there as well as a nickel corner. So I think all of it kind of just goes together, but it's all riding and dying on pick number 20 overall with Kadarius Toney. Do you get the true value out of him, or would you have been better trading back again, if that wasn't possible, addressing a more critical need there with edge or something like that?
Long suffering is usually what's put before Jet fan. So the Jet fans now get to look at Zach Wilson as their quarterback of the future, Elijah Vera Tucker, who they got in the 14th overall pick, then Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, and Michael Carter, running back from North Carolina. So your draft grade for the Jets had a lot invested early here, 2 first-rounders and a second-round early pick. How do you think they came away from this draft, Tags?
I gave them an A-. I would have preferred them go with a cornerback instead of Elijah Moore in the second round, because this is a team that really desperately needed a cornerback. Right now, it looks like they're going to be starting Bless Austin and Bryce Hall. Bryce Hall was fine, but in terms of, like, injuries that he's dealt with throughout his career, they don't have a good cornerback unit. They needed a starting caliber cornerback, and I can't say that Michael Carter in the 5th round, Michael Carter 2, I should say, in the 5th round makes a whole lot of sense. He's not going to start right away. Jason Pinnock, again, not a guy that's going to start right away. But Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, Elijah Moore, and Michael Carter, they went big offense here. It's like, hey, we're going to give our man some playmakers. We're going to give our man an offensive lineman to help here. We're going to give him a running back. I like all the players they drafted. I mean, Zach Wilson, the jury's out on that. I mean, would I have taken him at number 2? Probably not. I probably would have went Justin Fields, Trey Lance. But again, Zach Wilson was in that territory with those guys, so I don't hate that pick. Vera Tucker was a solid pick at 14 for them to trade back up, and they didn't even give up much to do it. I like Elijah Moore, the football player. Now, the reason I would have passed on him is because Jamison Crowder's there. They didn't really need him right now. They signed Keelan Cole in free agency, a guy that has experience in the slot. So I don't know why they needed him. I would have rather gone cornerback there, but ultimately it was a very, very good draft for them. I gave him an A-.
I got to tell you, I have a terrible fear that the Jets look back on this draft and Fields and Lance become very good quarterbacks in this league. and they'll say, oh, we did it again, we missed again. Because look, he's got just as many questions, if not more, than some of the quarterbacks that went after him, in my opinion. So, Yates, what's your take here on the Jets draft? How did they do?
I think that they did pretty well. With Elijah Vera Tucker, that is a big move up for a guard. But also when, again, I'm preaching about context, where you're saying that we know, the Jets know that they're not going to be competing in this division right away, right? This is a long-term rebuild. They're heading in for the next couple years. And so they're throwing darts with those late corners that they've got. But they're doing everything that they can to support Zach Wilson now. They made the switch. They made the investment into Zach Wilson. Now make it work. Do everything that you can to surround him with talent. The pick that I love is Michael Carter, the running back out of North Carolina. And the joke, if you're not aware, the Jets drafted 2 Michael Carters. One is the running back out of North Carolina. One is a cornerback out of Duke, right? So all this just kind of goes together for me to say, with the offensive structure, with the offensive play call, the scheme, and then now the investment in the offensive line, the quarterback upgrade, Michael Carter, I think, is a fantastic fantasy option for 2021.
Now, hopefully a fantastic fantasy option is going to be Devontae Smith, wide receiver out of Alabama for the Philadelphia Eagles. They then took Landon Dickerson, the center from Alabama, with the second pick, back-to-back Bama boys. Then Milton Williams from Louisiana Tech, defensive tackle in the third. So what's your grade here on the Eagles draft here, Mike?
I love Devontae Smith. I love trading up in front of the Giants to get him. They got their alpha wide receiver. They got the number 1. Landon Dickerson, the second round, solid pick. They're going to probably put him at guard right away. Kelsey's still playing center. In third and fourth rounds, reaches on Milton Williams and Zach McPherson. But Kenneth Gainwell in the fifth, that's stupid value. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I feel like he's going to be buried in terms of, like, Miles Sanders is a good receiver. I don't know how much they're going to get Gainwell on the field, but he was the best receiving back in this class, in my opinion. So to get him in the 5th round was a steal. Patrick Johnson in the 7th round, edge out of Tulane. I didn't feel like he should fall that far. I feel like he's going to be a rotational edge rusher for them relatively quickly. So I thought it was a solid draft. I gave them a B here just because, again, the 3rd and 4th round picks didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Do you really think that Gainwell gets buried here, Yates? Because we already talked earlier about new regime, right? So is this a new regime too, where maybe they're not married to Miles Sanders or some other guys on this roster?
So my initial reaction when I saw that Gainwell 1 dropped to the 5th round, right? Fifth round was just ridiculous. Like, he should not have fallen to the 5th round. That was, and then initial reaction, seeing that he landed in Philadelphia was kind of like, well, crap. Now, he could have landed in a great spot for fantasy, and now he's going to compete with Boston Scott for that, like, change of pace back in this offense. But the more that I've thought about it over the past couple of days, I've come to the realization that this is Nick Sirianni coming over from Frank Reich in Indianapolis. And we talked about all the time last year. It was like Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines, Jordan Wilkins, all factoring in. I think that Gainwell is going to see the field, and I think that he's going to be utilized as a pass catcher, maybe even out of the slot, maybe even lined up out wide. Like, they can do that. They can motion him out wide, and they can get him in some mismatch situations with a linebacker out of the backfield. So I think that he's going to be used a little bit more than we're giving him, or that we think right now. Is it going to be enough to be sustained fantasy value? No, I don't think so. I think Miles Sanders is going to be the guy here in this offense, but I initially wrote off Kenneth Gainwell when he landed in Philadelphia. Now I'm kind of changing my tune here just a little bit, where I say, like, he actually might still be fantasy relevant.
If he is, like, my only concern is that he fell to the 5th, where they let him fall there. You know what I mean?
Right.
The Eagles had a couple picks before then where Gainwell was expected to go. I think there's a lot of teams that passed on him that are going to end up regretting that. But I hope you're right, though, Yates. I do.
I do, too. Najee Harris was selected first by the Pittsburgh Steelers. They finally got their running back, and what a classy job by him, too, throwing that draft party in the homeless shelter where he was a kid. I just love Najee Harris, man. He is just a great dude, smart dude, great football player, and I'm excited to see him, even though he's with the Steelers, I'm excited to see him in the NFL. Pat Freiermuth, a tight end that we all talked about quite a bit, really liking, and he was taken by the Steelers in the 2nd round, the 23rd overall pick. Then they took center Kendrick Green and Dan Moore, Jr., offensive tackle. So addressing the line there, back-to-back picks, followed by Buddy Johnson from Texas A&M, inside linebacker. So how did the Steelers do, in your opinion here, Tax?
I gave them a C-. I wasn't a huge fan. Now, I like Najee Harris, the football player. I think he's fantastic. But if you look at this draft and you say, what are the 2 positions that teams devalued and should have devalued, it was running back and tight end. And that's what they took in their first 2 picks. And I don't want to say they're convenience picks, but they kind of are. I think the Steelers are being a bit delusional right now in thinking they don't have any offensive line problems. Kendrick Green in the 3rd round, that's fine. But my opinion, what they should have done, if they took Najee Harris in the 1st, in the 2nd round, they should have gone with Creed Humphrey as center, and then in the 3rd round, maybe go after Tommy Tremble, because he probably would have been available around that territory. If you wanted to do that with the whole tight end mix, if you wanted a blocking tight end, because you have Eric Ebron on the roster right now. By the time that Freiermuth becomes a staple in this offense, Ben Roethlisberger's gone, so we don't even know if it's gonna be a pass first offense at that point. I gave them a C-. Didn't feel like it was a tremendous draft, and they also avoided cornerback until the 7th round, which made zero sense to me, considering it was one of the biggest needs they had on the roster.
Expectations will be high for Harris because obviously his career at Alabama and the deficiencies that the Steelers had last year running the football. But in your opinion, Yates, are expectations possibly too high because that offensive line still has issues?
We talked about it on the live stream. It's a chicken and the egg conversation. Like, what makes what? Does a good running back make the running game, or make the running game successful?
I think it's a bit of both.
Solid offensive line, right? So I think with the offensive line here, the Kendrick Green selection is interesting because he's an undersized center. He moves extremely well, so he's perfect for an outside zone, but that's not exactly what they run here in Pittsburgh. So it's like, okay, are you changing your offensive philosophy, your style? What does that mean now with a power back in Najee Harris? So all of it just kind of goes together where you're like, cornerback was a huge need. Offensive tackle, you needed to invest in that a little bit earlier than what you did. So all of it just kind of goes together for me to say, like, I like Najee Harris and I like Pat Freiermuth in a vacuum. At those spots, maybe it was worth going a different direction.
All right, the Seattle Seahawks didn't have many picks. 2nd round was the first one they had. They took Dwayne Eskridge, a fan favorite here on the program, at wide receiver. He should probably play in the slot, I would imagine. Trey Brown from Oklahoma was their 4th round selection. Cornerback, so tags. Not a lot of picks here, so what do you do about it?
I mean, they really couldn't do a whole lot here. I gave them a D+, and it's not because I hate the players, just because you had 3 picks in the draft, and none of them were first rounders. You only had 1 second rounder. And Dwayne Eskridge, I like him. It does fill a need. They needed a number 3 wide receiver on that team. He could stretch the field. Russell Wilson, fantastic. I also like what they did in terms of undrafted free agents. Cade Johnson went there, and Tamorian Terry went there. So it's like the wide receivers, all of a sudden that depth chart, I think I like it. I think Seattle's pleasantly surprised that those players were undrafted, and they were able to go out there and snag them and kind of fill out their depth chart. Trey Brown, really interested to see how that works out because he's more of a slot cornerback, and Ugo Amadi is someone that played extremely well for them in the slot last year. So I really don't get that part. It was going to be difficult for them to get a good grade, and that's why they're getting a D+.
All right, Yates, same thing, just not enough picks to really amount for anything, even if they did well in the free agent market.
Yeah, you really kind of limited yourself to be able to only have 3 picks. And this, I expected Seattle to do what Seattle always does and just trade back, which is why them staying put at 56 and taking Dwayne Eskridge is really, really interesting to me. And again, context, right? You only have 3 picks in the entire draft, and you choose to stay put and draft a guy who I was really high on, who you see in my Twitter mentions. There are a ton of people who are not high on him. And this is kind of a huge vote of confidence where you're like, Seattle clearly has a plan to utilize Dwayne Eskridge. They thought that he was the perfect player to bring in at this spot, drafted before Terrace Marshall. Like, all of this just kind of goes together for me to say, like, Eskridge, this is a really actually sneaky good landing spot with Russell Wilson as his quarterback.
Yeah, 3 for 3.
Hey, guys, real quick, I'm going to put you both on the spot. Who would you rather have right now in a dynasty rookie draft, Dwayne Eskridge or Elijah Moore?
Oh, that's a tough... I think I'd rather have Eskridge.
I'm going Eskridge because of my pre-draft grade. Like, I'll lean into that.
Yeah. What do you think, Tags?
I have them right next to each other. I have Eskridge higher right now, but it's kind of like I could see going one way or the other for sure. But I
think Eskridge benefits like immediately from his surroundings.
Having Russell Wilson it bumps you up my board. Second round equity.
Yeah, I think that's across the board there. San Francisco took Trey Lance. That's right, Trey Lance for the win. Their quarterback of the future. Aaron Banks was their 2nd pick, the offensive guard from Notre Dame. Then they took Trey Sermon from Ohio State, running back, because, they love running backs there. And then Ambry Thomas, cornerback from Michigan. So, Tags, what's your grade for the 49ers? They did stick to the guns and took Trey Lance, who was all along. That's who it was. I mean, Shanahan took the mask off and said, it was me all along. See? Yeah.
I gave them a B-, and it's not because of the Trey Lance pick. I love that pick. Aaron Banks in the 2nd round, like that dude is like a 6th round pick, maybe trading up for.
I feel
Trey
like you wanted to bro somebody just now. You're like, Aaron Banks, bro. bro.
Bro. But no. Trey Sermon, trading up for him. I mean, I felt like they could have gotten Trey Sermon at pick 102 most likely. Now, will he fit the system? Sure, probably. But there was just, it wasn't phenomenal, but I love the fact that they took Trey Lance instead of Mac Jones. That's all.
Yates, we know how you feel about this one, but, did they do enough after this, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, Trey Sermon is a really interesting one, right? He moved dramatically up my dynasty rankings, in my dynasty big board. So I think he's worth a late first-round pick in dynasty rookie drafts. I think that you can spend that because they traded up to get him. They had a need at running back on this roster, and this offense is about to go nuclear with Trey Lance, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. Good night. Like, the scoring opportunities galore. The name that I really wanted to mention here that I really like later on is Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell in the 6th round that they got out of Louisiana. This is a really, really interesting landing spot because of his speed. Like, he changed his body. We've talked about that. Changed his body, ran a ridiculous 40-yard dash at his pro day, just over 200 pounds. He fits exactly what Kyle Shanahan wants in a running back, whereas Trey Sermon is a little bit outside of that prototype. So Elijah Mitchell, keep an eye on him because I think that he could actually work his way into some significant touches in this offense.
All right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took Joe Tryon, outside linebacker from Washington, with their first pick. Then Kyle Trask, a little surprising there, just a little, with a second-round pick there. Then after that, Robert Hainsey from Notre Dame, offensive tackle, and Jalen Darden, wide receiver from North Texas. So not a lot of picks here for, in terms of equity, but what did they make the most of them, I guess, Tax, at the end of the day, did the Bucs?
Yeah, solid draft. I gave them a B. Joe Tryon, edge rusher, never a bad position to target at the end of the first round when you have a complete roster. Kyle Trask in the second. Some may have found that surprising. I think it was necessary. They don't have a competent backup to Tom Brady. I think it's fantastic to put Trask behind him. He's a guy that's done a lot with a little. I mean, there's a lot of doubters in his life, but to play behind Brady, I think that's going to be good for him. Adding to the offensive line in the 3rd round, Jalen Darden in the 4th. I felt like Jalen Darden was probably better than Tutu Atwell. They got him 2 rounds later.
1,000%.
Wow.
That's how I feel about it. So nothing crazy about this draft that it's like, oh, they smashed it, but I think it was a very solid draft.
Was it solid for you as well, Yates?
Yeah, they got 2 of my guys. They got Joe Tryon and they got Jalen Darden. So I'm a fan of it, but it's also one of those ones where I look back and I'm like, yes, they absolutely smashed it. It's a solid draft all around. And I think that it's difficult to say like they addressed critical needs because they don't have any critical needs. So they addressed some really important positions that'll help them down the road.
All right, the Tennessee Titans had a lot of needs, lost a lot of players year over year. Caleb Farley was the first one they took at corner. Then Dylan Radden's offensive tackle from North Dakota State, that a lot of people were very high on. A lot of buzz about him going into the last few days leading up to the draft. Then Monty Rice from Georgia, inside linebacker. Elijah Molden from Washington, the cornerback. Des Fitzpatrick in the 4th round, wide receiver. And then Rashod Weaver from Pittsburgh, a defensive end. So did the Titans come out of this draft improved, in your opinion here, Tags?
In a couple ways, yes, but did they address their needs in this draft? Not so much. I mean, Caleb Farley was a fantastic pick, falling to 22 and then running up there and saying, hey, we're going to take a top-tier cornerback.
It's Jeffrey Simmons part 2, where a player falls because of injury. He's incredibly talented. You get him onto your roster, he turns out to be phenomenal.
Well, if that's the case, they did all right.
Yeah. No, Farley's going to be good. He's going to be a playmaker for them. He's going to be ready week 1. Dylan Radden's, I thought it was a solid pick, too, going right tackle after you missed on Isaiah Wilson last year. But Monty Rice in the 3rd, Des Fitzpatrick in the 4th. Like, guys, there were a lot of talented wide receivers still on the board in those rounds. I just felt like they didn't address nose tackle either, which is a position that they have no depth at. I feel like they can upgrade the starting position. Even though it was a weak class, I felt like they could have upgraded in this draft. So as the draft went on, I was like, Elijah Molden, okay, whatever. But Des Fitzpatrick, that was the weird one where it's like you guys needed wide receivers badly, like extremely bad. You have A.J. Brown, cool, and then you bring in Josh Reynolds. There's a reason the Rams let him walk and then drafted 3 wide receivers.
I was going to say, the
he
Rams
was replaceable.
You got to be bad if the Rams don't want you as a wide receiver because they want everybody as a wide receiver. Now, we're just kidding about Reynolds. He's a good player. But, I mean, Yates, that was the whole thing. We kept waiting for them to replace what they are lacking now. And it's not just a wide receiver, too. You're missing targets now that are going to question mark now that Jonnu Smith is gone, too. So it's more than just that. So what are the Titans doing here?
The Titans had way more needs than what they were going to be able to fill in this draft.
Okay,
they're going to have to either in undrafted free agency, in the free agents after the comp pick formula, I think that happens today is where they can sign free agents, and it doesn't count against the comp pick formula. So I would expect to see them very active on the remaining free agent market. So corner, you addressed it in a big way. Caleb Farley, Elijah Molden, great picks. Elijah Molden is undersized. He's a nickel corner. So at this spot, that's a perfect value point, but he's a really good player. The issue that I have is Des Fitzpatrick there, where Amon-Ra St. Brown was still on the board. Like you should have taken Amon-Ra St. Brown.
That would have been a great.
It would have been perfect. It would have been a perfect fit. Would have been great. And you took Des Fitzpatrick, who is a year away from being ready to contribute in a big way. So, man, I just think yes, they did the best they could, but they also missed on a couple of key spots.
I feel like in one of our mocks, that's exactly where we had him going, I believe, if memory serves. I don't know which one.
In like the second round.
I was going to say, but it was like in the second or even third round where it was, but I don't know, man. I'll throw this out there for you guys. Is there any chance that they're one of the teams that are trying potentially to pry away Julio Jones? Yeah.
Potentially.
It would make a lot of sense.
I mean, to me, that's the only thing I could come away with in this draft, because if they're the team that's like kicking the tires, trying to figure out a way to make that work, okay, because you want to make sure you keep everything kind of at a lower rung anyway to make sure you're opening stuff up for them. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. All right, last one here. We did it. We made it all the way to Washington, down to the football team. Jamin Davis taken first there by them, inside linebacker, then Samuel Cosmi, who fell, I think, a little bit longer than any of us might have thought, the Texas offensive tackle. Then the third round, Benjamin St-Juste from Minnesota, the cornerback, and Dyami Brown, wide receiver from North Carolina, in the third. So your grade tags for the Washington football team.
It was an A-. They did very well. Getting Jamin Davis is someone that he's basically a work in progress. We know what the ceiling is, and Ron Rivera and that coaching staff has continually churned out top-tier linebackers.
Yes, they have.
Loved it. So therefore, he's in a position to succeed. It was a position of weakness that they had. Samuel Cosmi at 51. After all those offensive tackles came out, I think Cosmi was a first-round talent, and I think this was a steal by them. Again, the biggest position of need for me, offensive tackle for them. So they landed that. St-Juste in the third. Dyami Brown. Some people were talking about Dyami Brown as like an early second-round pick. Yep. I didn't think he was one of those guys. I felt like he was around the third round. So, he's going to compete for that number 3 wide receiver job come camp. I felt like they hit when they needed to, and they attacked they hit the players that they needed to, and they attacked positions of weakness on the roster. I loved it.
Yates, your thoughts on Washington? Were you as high on these picks as tags?
Did you give your grade for that, tags, for Washington? A-. Okay, yeah. I couldn't remember. I just want to make sure that we got that. So I love this draft. I'm right in agreement with Tex. Jamin Davis there fits exactly what Ron Rivera values. And again, you mentioned it, Tex. They've been able to develop linebacker after linebacker after linebacker to phenomenal levels. So love the draft pick there. Samuel Cosmi, absolute steal, complete agreement. Dyami Brown, I actually really, really, really like this landing spot for Dyami Brown. I did not have him anywhere. I think I had him as wide receiver 12 in this class heading into the draft. So this is around where I thought he was going to go. But this fit here in Washington to be that field stretching option with Ryan Fitzpatrick and then opening things up underneath for Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, love the fit. He's going to have to compete. He's going to have to beat out Antonio Gandy-Golden, Kelvin Harmon, these other guys, and I think he can do it. But from a landing spot, from a fantasy perspective, absolutely love it.
Ron Rivera and his crew have done a tremendous job in difficult circumstances in Washington, and I think this is very encouraging. If you're a Washington football team fan, I think you come away from this draft, come away from last season saying, hey, this team has a lot of heart, a lot of future, and a lot of things going in the right direction. So in case you want to go back and listen to anything, again, we did all the teams in alphabetical order, so as long as you know your ABCs, you can just go back and manipulate however you want in the podcast of which team you want to go back and hear again. If you want to get some breakdowns for all your drafts, and reminding everybody, we've got some drafts going on this week. We're going to be doing our first-year startup Dynasty live stream on Friday. Keep an eye on that. That'll be right here at Fantasy Pros on the YouTube channel. And also we'll be doing a little best ball draft thanks to Underdog. And again, go to UnderdogFantasy.com and use that promo code FantasyPros to get your free Best Ball Mania 2 entry right now. And we want to thank the other sponsor of our show today, Blue Chew. If you go to BlueChew.com and use that code FantasyPros, you get the first month free and just $5 shipping. Again, that's BlueChew.com. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Tags and Yates, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.